As a father, I just want to watch you achieve immortality. Li Che had transmigrated and, after living 19 ordinary years, he opted to accept his fate, marrying and having children, striving to support his family. But the moment his daughter was born, through his daughter, he rose in status, and his life was no longer ordinary. Chapter 1, The Birth of the Beloved Daughter and the Joy of Obtaining a Dao Fruit. Great Vista, Yun Province, Feilei City. A night of heavy snowfall had dressed the dilapidated city in a coat of silver, the cold biting to the bone. The grey overcast sky, the cold wind sharp as a knife, slicing to the bone. Li Che tightened his thin cotton coat around him, holding in his hand a carp frozen stiff, which had cost him a great deal of money to procure during the winter. It was to nourish his pregnant wife. Touching his bristly beard, he breathed out a white mist into his palm. Li Che braved the cold wind, trampling on the snow-covered streets of Feilei City, and hurried towards his home. After 19 years in this world, from a newborn baby to a poor man struggling to make a living, Li Che had given up on the fantasy of having a golden finger. Skyscrapers and neon lights had become a dreamlike illusion, leaving behind only memories that he could no longer return to. This world was akin to ancient times but even more dangerous, with natural disasters, man-made calamities, and evil spirits rampant, making life difficult for the common people. Having accepted his fate, Li Che just wanted to protect his warm household and family, to live a safe and stable life and make the best of his second shot at life. As arranged by his family, he married at the age of 18, a wedding night that hit the mark, and now, 10 moons later, his wife was about to give birth. Feilei City was large, divided into the inner city and the outer city. The inner city was said to be where the noble families and official masters lived, with spacious streets, extravagant lifestyles, and tight security. Only those with status could reside in the inner city. As for the outer city, that's where the vast majority of toiling commoners lived. Walking several miles along the main street and turning into a narrow alley, what came into view were rows of low, dark-tiled earthen houses. Hurried footsteps crunched upon the soft snow. Che! Ouch, Che, you've finally come back from work. Your wife is about to give birth, hurry back and check on her. You're going to be a dad. From afar, neighbors who knew Li Che started shouting when they saw him. Li Che was startled. Tense and anxious, he quickened his pace and ran towards his earthen house, with the snow scattering behind him. The sky had already dimmed, and as Li Che arrived at the front door of his house, the old wooden door was open, and from inside came the sounds of a woman enduring pain and the encouraging voice of the midwife. You're back. In the small yard outside the earthen house, an old scholar was sitting on a shabby bench, wearing a cotton jacket inside and an old scholar's robe outside, puffing on a dry pipe with a clack. This scholar was Li Che's uncle, Li Liang. When Li Che was 8, his parents had died of illness, and he was taken in by his uncle. With his family's help, he had grown up smoothly, married, and was about to have a child. Don't worry, Grandma Lei is the best midwife within a 10-mile radius, Xiaoya will be fine, mother and child will surely be safe, said the old scholar with the dry pipe. Having lived through 2 lifetimes, but becoming a father for the first time, Li Che was naturally nervous. Holding the frozen carp, he paced back and forth in front of his earthen house. This made the old scholar somewhat impatient. What are you prancing around for, you rascal? A man about to be a dad should show some steadiness. Can you put down that frozen fish first? Li Che looked at him, said nothing in reply, and of course, did not put down the fish. Instead, he stopped pacing. Since suddenly, a loud cry came from the house. Li Che's eyes sharpened, his heart felt as if it was being tightly grasped by a hand. The old scholar, Li Liang, who was puffing on his pipe, immediately got up, extinguished the pipe, and eagerly looked towards the house. Suddenly, the dusky sky let out a thunderous roar. The old scholar shuddered, muttering under his breath. Li Che instinctively looked up, seeing the sky as if a dragon had made a brief and flickering appearance. Was this a sign accompanying birth? Did he think he was in a fantasy novel? Li Che did not entertain that notion. Following the midwife's calling, he hurried into the house. The charcoal stove burned inside the house, dispelling the cold and bringing a hint of warmth. In the midwife's arms was a rosy-faced newborn. She looked at Li Che. Congratulations, Master Li, and felicitations, you have a lovely daughter. Li Che's face broke into a smile, and his hand holding the frozen carp seemed suddenly unsure where to place it, only managing to say, thank you, thank you. After hastily expressing his gratitude to the midwife, he then belatedly threw away the fish. Carefully, with trembling hands, he took his child and looked her over. The sight gave him a sense of a blood bond forming, and although the skin of a newborn was wrinkled and it was hard to tell if she was pretty or not, Li Che thought that this child was the most beautiful in the whole world. Because she was Li Che's daughter. Just as Li Che was filled with joy, staring incessantly at the little baby, his vision suddenly blurred as if a mirage had appeared, as if on a vast, empty land where the earth and rocks burst apart, rubble shot through the air, and a sprout as green as emerald vigorously grew, soaring straight up. In an instant, it turned into a towering tree with branches spreading wide. This! Li Che was utterly bewildered. As countless leaves trembled, it was as though they reflected light and unexpectedly formed the image. He saw himself outside the earth house, listening to the sound of his daughter's birth and her loud cries. The image flashed by, and then, visible to the naked eye, it shrank like a vortex, finally converging in a corner of the branches, solidifying into a translucent, rainbow-colored fruit. Joy of a precious daughter, bonds are bound. With the birth of your beloved daughter, the Dao tree bears fruit. Your daughter was born safely, you have obtained a Dao fruit. Li Che suddenly came back to his senses, with his daughter's WAWA crying still ongoing. Husband, let me see our daughter. The weak voice came from the pale-faced, pretty young woman on the bed, and Li Che hurriedly held the baby carefully and moved closer. Wife, look, our baby. Li Che couldn't help but break into a smile, so bright and full of joy. The Dao fruit and such, he had no inclination to think about those for the moment, as his heart was filled only with his wife and daughter. His wife, Zhang Ye, Li Che's other half, was also the woman who, in these chaotic times, was willing to entrust her life to him. Husband, our baby's nose really looks like yours, so perky, said Zhang Ye, her face wan, yet she was filled with joy, extending her slender fingers to gently touch the baby's tiny nose. Li Che looked tenderly at his wife. Wife, does it hurt? Zhang Ye pursed her pale lips, gave a light laugh, and shook her head. It doesn't hurt, I'm happy. Husband, what should we name our child? Zhang Ye asked expectantly, but seeming to remember something, her gaze passed over Li Che and intuitively looked towards Old Scholar standing steadily at the doorway. Li Che glanced at Old Scholar, seeing him furrowing his two brows, unusually silent, and not showing off his literary talent or asserting his right to name the daughter. Li Che then realized what he must be thinking. But he didn't mind, he held his wife's cold hand and softly said, these days, I have already thought of it. This winter is extremely cold, and I only hope that our little child can stay warm, let's name her Li Nuangzai. Warm as the fire of the morning sun, dispelling diseases and pain, to grow up safe and happy. Li Che spoke in a gentle voice. Zhang Ye smiled happily, Nuangzai, such a lovely name. In Zhang Ye's arms, Xixi seemed to have heard her name as well, no longer crying, and revealed a smiling face. However, a moment later, she again opened her mouth and began to cry loudly. The midwife quickly stepped forward, the baby must be hungry, she needs to be fed. Hearing this, Li Che and Old Scholar quickly left the earth house. In the courtyard, thick snowflakes floated down from the sky. The chill rose, and the deep winter was harsh. The smile never left Li Che's face, realizing what it was like to be a father, and a sense of responsibility to protect his wife and child welled up in his heart. However, Old Scholar seemed a little downhearted, picking up his dry pipe again to smoke. Li Che frowned at the smell. Uncle, snuff it out quickly, the child is here. Old Scholar sighed, put out the dry pipe, but pursed his lips, it's just a girl, why couldn't it be a boy, our Li family? Upon hearing this, Li Che laughed, being a boy or a girl, does it matter? Does the Li family have a throne to inherit? Old Scholar heard this, his preference for males over females wasn't so easily dispelled, but he fell silent and continued mumbling to himself softly. Li Che shook his head but didn't say much more. He picked up a carp frozen stiff and headed towards the kitchen, planning to make a warm bowl of carp and tofu soup for his wife. While cooking the fish soup, Li Che finally settled down to properly study the Dao fruit that had been born alongside his daughter. Chapter 2, Dao Fruit Immortal Craftsman, Six-Eyed Bodhisattva. He calmed his mind and closed his eyes. Li Che then saw once again the scene he had glimpsed briefly before. A vast land with a large tree rising from the ground, its branches lush and leaves fluttering, carrying a fruit that glowed with flowing, colorful lights. As if he had stared for too long, the colorful fruit dropped with a plunk and gently landed in Li Chei's hand. Dao fruit. Li Chei murmured, looking at the fruit in his palm. Your daughter is born safe, and you have acquired a Dao fruit immortal artisan. Immortal artisan, Dao fruit immortal artisan of myriad forms, divine touch, unparalleled skills. The words flickered and surfaced. Li Chei's gaze fixed, and his heart suddenly stirred. In the 19 years since coming to this world, he had never acquired a golden finger, but now, with the birth of his daughter, the golden finger had appeared in such a form. Was it fortune by the daughter? Li Chei began to feel overjoyed. The name Dao fruit sounded so prestigious, it surely could be his capital to secure a livelihood in this world. Just as he was delighted, the prompt in front of him changed again. Name, Li Chei. Bonds, Li Nuangzai, daughter. Dao fruit, immortal artisan, unevolved, LV1, 0%. Hint, for each safe year of growth of the bond object, the Dao tree can produce a Dao fruit. His breath became slightly hurried. Li Chei stared at the prompt in shock, his emotions violently fluctuating. Each year his daughter grew up safely, the Dao tree could produce a Dao fruit. In Li Chei's simple understanding, the function of the Dao fruit was equivalent to imparting him a skill, a capability. Currently, Li Chei worked in a wood carving shop in the outer city of Flying Thunder City, moving finished wood carvings, a job of labor but paid by the piece, quite fair to everyone involved. However, after a hard day's work, exhausted, he could earn about 30 or 40 dying cast copper coins, enough to make ends meet, but dreaming of wealth and luxury in this world was a fool's errand. With diuresis. But from now on, if he could ensure his daughter grew up safely, one Dao fruit a year, everything might be different. Xixi is my daughter, I should protect her and ensure her safe growth, that is my duty as a father. Li Chei smiled happily, the change in fortune brought by his daughter's birth, the hope for the future, how could he not be joyful? As the Dao fruit in his palm slowly dissolved, Li Chei did not notice any changes in himself. He analyzed the immortal artisan Dao fruit but had no clue. Gurgle gurgle. The carp soup boiled and bubbled in the pot, interrupting Li Chei's thoughts. He hastened to scoop up a bowl of fragrant, steaming, creamy carp and tofu soup, took a deep breath, the corner of his lips curled into a smile, and he carefully walked towards the earth house with the hot soup. His wife, Zhang Yue, had finished feeding Xixi and was contentedly sipping the carp soup Li Chei had cooked. Xixi was being held by Li Chei, who gently patted her tender back under Grandma Lei's guidance, a thing called burping. After bustling around in the earth house for a while, Grandma Lei gave Li Chei some child-rearing tips and was about to say goodbye and leave. Li Chei handed Xixi to Zhang Yue and followed her out. Grandma Lei, thank you so much, you've been a great help, Li Chei gave 10 coins to Grandma Lei. Grandma Lei waved her hand, sighed, Chei, I've watched you grow up from a child. You move those heavy woods and sculptures for Sue's wood carving shop, earning hard-earned money isn't easy, keep this money, take good care of your family. Things have been tough in the outer city recently, not many children being born, and yet many are dying young, take good care of Xixi, and pay attention to safety. The words of Grandma Lei made Li Chei's face turn solemn. Grandma. Grandma Lei wrapped her head with a cloth, carrying a bamboo basket, bracing against the snowstorm, and advised, remember, don't take the child to roam the streets carelessly, and stay far away from those who worship the child god, those who live off the offerings. The world is harsh, children die young, you parents, must be extremely cautious. Li Chei exhaled a breath of white air in the cold winter snowstorm, nodding seriously. His heart sank slightly, indeed, there had been many reports of child deaths recently. Li Chei hadn't taken it seriously before, but now that he was a father, he naturally had to be more careful. Understood, Grandma Lei. Li Chei responded gravely. Grandma Lei didn't say more, sighed, tightened her coat, and disappeared into the snowy night, gradually vanishing in the snow-laden alleys in front of the earth houses. Li Chei watched Grandma Lei's figure vanish, then turned back into the earth house, quickly stuffed the door crack tight to prevent the heat from escaping. Li Chei rubbed his hands together, added some charcoal to the stove, and then went to the kitchen to bring back the leftover fish soup. After the couple had their fill, Li Chei climbed onto the bed. Gently patting his daughter, who was sound asleep after her milk, Li Chei squinted his eyes, his lips betraying a smile he couldn't suppress. Speaking softly with his wife, Zhang Yue, who might have been exhausted from giving birth, soon fell into a deep sleep. Yet Li Chei, with wide-awake eyes, murmured energetically. The charcoal is all gone again, I'll go buy some more from the charcoal seller tomorrow. XIXI was just born, we can't let her get cold. My wife needs to properly go through her confinement or she might suffer from postpartum complications. I'll also bring more statues from the wood carving shop tomorrow. Recently, the demand for statues in the inner city has suddenly increased. There is plenty of work and a good amount of money to be made. I will definitely work hard to save money to buy a big mansion where we can stay warm even in the dead of winter. My wife, don't worry, our days will definitely get better. On the bed, Li Che gently held his wife and daughter, and slowly closed his eyes. The silent rhythm of breath was the only sound. The next day dawned. Li Che got up early, watched his wife, Zhang Ye, who was in confinement, eat the breakfast he had prepared, and after patting XIXI to burp following her milk, he put on his bamboo hat and left the earthen house. The ground was white and the wind was chilly, with snowflakes as big as hands. The cold was biting, as sharp as a knife. The snow showed no signs of stopping, piling up thickly on the ground of the outer city of Feilei City. After walking several miles, with the dim morning light and amidst the snowstorm, he arrived at his place of work, Su's wood carving shop. Though called a shop, it was actually a huge mansion, extremely spacious inside, with many piles of wood for carving. Li Che and several other hired hands were mainly responsible for carrying wood to the carvers at the wood carving shop or transporting finished wood carvings. The wood carvings varied in weight but the price was uniform. Transporting a wood carving earned 5 dying cast copper coins, while carrying wood earned less, just 1 copper coin each time. Mainly because transporting wood carvings involved risks. Any scratch or bump, and you could have your pay docked completely. Shaking off the snow from his body, Li Che took off his bamboo hat and placed it at his workstation, entering the wood carving shop. The shop was heated by a charcoal furnace, the temperature moderate, with the rich scent of wood lingering in the air. Little Li, go fetch me a piece of curved willow, a bigger one, and also, help me move the six-eyed bodhisattva statue carved 3 days ago into the inner room. Someone from the inner city is coming to pick it up in a few days, it wouldn't be good if it soaks in melted snow. As soon as he entered the shop, an old man in a cotton-padded jacket, with white hair and a ruddy complexion, called out to Li Che while holding a shiny wine gourd filled with aged yellow wine. Sure, Master Chen. Li Che flashed a brilliant smile and hurriedly responded. As a familiar helper in the shop and given his carefulness and agility, he had never had an accident while transporting wood carvings, earning him a good reputation. Thus, several wood carving masters, once they got to know him better, would specify him for the jobs. Master Chen was one of Li Che's regulars. After responding to Master Chen, Li Che turned and entered the spacious courtyard. The snow was pouring down, covering the many logs scattered across the yard. It took some effort to locate the area where the curved willow was stored. Finding a bigger piece, Li Che dragged it out. Tying it with hemp rope and securing it well, he tested the weight, then patted the wood and turned toward the corner of the courtyard where the finished wood carvings were kept. Because Master Chen had mentioned the six-eyed bodhisattva, Li Che knew exactly where it was located. Finding the wood carving covered with snow, similar in size to a grown man, and also carved from flowering curved willow, Li Che reached out his hand to brush the snow off the carving. Suddenly, a strange feeling arose in his heart. The six-eyed bodhisattva statue seemed to come alive as its 6 eyes stared at him, blinking occasionally. Suddenly, vague images flooded his mind. It was Master Chen, carving with each stroke, the image of the six-eyed bodhisattva. Li Che felt as if he was on the scene, merging with Master Chen. Gradually, the carving techniques and skills of the six-eyed bodhisattva seemed to merge into Li Che's own instincts. Hey! The images before his eyes dispersed, and the six-eyed bodhisattva no longer blinked. Li Che's breathing became rapid. His heart stirred. Just by touching the wood carving, it seemed he had learned Master Chen's carving techniques. This must surely be related to the Dao fruit immortal artisan he had received the day before because of his daughter Xixi's birth. Unparalleled immortal artisan, the hand of genius, unsurpassed skills. The effect of Dao fruit immortal artisan might just give me a chance to become a true master wood carver. Li Che's eyes mildly brightened, and ambitions began to stir in his heart. If he could become a wood carver at Su's wood carving shop, that would be much more promising than being a helper transporting wood and carvings. To let his family live a good life in these chaotic times would no longer be an extravagant wish. Chapter 3, 9 Sons Embracing the Lotus, The Method of Inner Strength. Suji's wood carving shop was among the top-ranked wood carving shops in the outer city, often receiving orders from the inner city, which had a tremendous demand for various types of wood carvings. Whether carving landscapes or statues of bodhisattvas and Buddhas, or even images of gods that Li Che had never heard of before. For a laborer, transporting both the wood and the finished statues meant receiving a fixed piece rate pay, which wasn't much to begin with, and it was back-breaking work. However, if one could become an official wood carving master, carving a finished product could earn at least 10 silver coins. Even more, Li Che had heard that Master Chen once carved a 1,000-armed Guanyin wood carving statue that took almost a month to complete and earned him a gold leaf, which was equivalent to 100 taels. Such craftsmanship could make ordinary people extremely wealthy. Li Che was tempted. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to dream so far. Wood carving skills needed to be nurtured from a young age, and they tested talent as well as artistry. Many apprentices in the wood carving shop were sent there by their families at the age of 5 or 6 in exchange for silver. When Li Che started working in the wood carving shop, he was already 13 and had missed the appropriate age. He once had the idea of self-learning and becoming successful, but after trying for a few days, he gave up. How could he, with just a few days of self-study, beat others who had toiled for almost their entire childhood? Moreover, carving wood was one thing to watch, but quite another to actually put into practice. I'll find an opportunity to try. The Dao fruit of the immortal artisan might really have given me a talent for wood carving. A sense of anticipation couldn't help but arise in Li Che's heart. The cold wind brushed by, helping Li Che regain some clarity of mind. He buried the thought of becoming a wood carving master in his heart for the time being and focused on his work. Transporting finished wood carvings was different from transporting raw timber, requiring much more care to prevent damaging the carvings. He wrapped them in cloth and tied them with hemp rope to avoid abrasion damage from the rope during carrying. Carrying the six-eyed bodhisattva statue on his back, Li Che walked cautiously toward the inner room. Upon reaching Master Chen's workshop, Li Che set down the statue, removed the cloth, and after ensuring there were no signs of rubbing, breathed a sigh of relief. Master Chen, I brought in the bodhisattva statue. Shall I fetch you a larger piece of the flowering curved willow now? Li Che, relaxing his shoulders, said with a smile. Master Chen was already sitting on his work stool, sharpening his carving knife on a whetstone. Yes, hurry up. This time I need to carve a 9 suns embracing lotus, and it's a tedious process. Besides, the inner city is in a rush for it. After inspecting the sharpness of his carving knife, Master Chen said. Li Che returned to the courtyard where snow was drifting down and was about to move the flowering curved willow timber he had picked. But the moment he touched the wood, he felt the Dao fruit of the immortal artisan pulse slightly, giving him an inexplicable sensation. This piece of flowering curved willow doesn't seem quite right for the 9 suns embracing lotus statue, Li Che murmured softly. Most of the time, wood carving masters would pick the timber themselves, but of course there were exceptions. Some were confident enough in their skills that they couldn't be bothered to pick timber personally in the cold winter snow. However, if a laborer chose unsuitable timber, if the wood carving master was easygoing, it wouldn't be a big deal, but if they had a bad temper, they might deduct money for the transport. If that occurred, not only would one need to move the timber multiple times, but they would also be docked pay, a big loss. Li Che abandoned the flowering curved willow and began to pick another piece from the timber pile, touching them with his palm until he chose one that, influenced by the Dao fruit of the immortal artisan, felt just right. Carrying the slightly heavier piece of flowering curved willow, he returned to Master Chen's workshop. Not bad at all, Li. You have a good eye. This timber you picked is perfectly suitable. Master Chen was pleasantly surprised because the piece of wood matched the image of the 9 suns embracing lotus he had in mind almost exactly. With just a few strokes, he could sketch out the rough outline, saving a lot of the time usually needed for pondering and conceptualizing. Li Che smiled but said nothing to take credit. After praising him, Master Chen continued working on the carving preparations. Little Li, help me move this timber onto the frame. I heard your daughter was born. I'll pay extra for this job, said Master Chen, standing up with a smile. Li Che's eyes lit up at his words and he promptly agreed. After slipping on the rope, he started to lift the heavy flowering curved willow onto the metal frame. The inner city is in a hurry, and recently they've been demanding a lot of childwood carvings, definitely related to the recent buzz about the spirit infant master. The fancies of the inner city nobles, really, they change every so often. Master Chen shook his head and muttered. They want it in 5 days, and my old bones, seems I'll be busy enough falling apart. But they're paying well, hee, Li, guess how much the client is offering for this job. Master Chen rubbed his hands together, striking up a conversation with Li Che while approaching the flowering curved willow dampened by the heavy snow. Li Che wiped the sweat from his forehead and breathed out, for a 5-day delivery, it must be at least 50 taels, right? Thinking the 9 suns embracing lotus statue was less complicated than the 1,000-armed Guanyin, Li Che made a conservative estimate. 50 taels? Hee. It's less than that, a gold leaf less. Master Chen laughed, and then slapped the timber with his hand. The skin on his arm seemed to glow with a red hue, and heat steamed out from his palm into the wood, driving the moisture out of the timber. The heat was intense, like standing next to a boiling furnace as he stood by Master Chen's side. Li Che took a deep breath, both astonished that the wood carving was worth 150 taels and envious of Master Chen's mysterious skills. These wood carving masters were not just skilled crafters but also, as the legends say, martial artists. Those who became wood carving masters were all beings with inner strength, capable of using it to dry the wood, saving a good amount of time. Moreover, the inner strength infused into the wood carvings gave them a certain profundity. It was this profundity that truly made the nobles of the inner city willingly fork out their money for the wood carving master's creations. Master Chen, catching Li Che's shocked and envious gaze, asked with a teasing smile, "Want to learn? If you want to learn, it's going to cost you. Although you won't learn any superior internal strength techniques, the ordinary internal strength techniques left by Su Ji in the outer city are all learnable. Another few decades of hard cultivation, and you'll probably be able to manifest inner strength." Li Che's mind stirred slightly. "Master Chen, may I ask how much does an internal strength technique cost?" "You can't buy a superior internal strength technique with money, you have to go to Su Ji in the inner city to learn, and ordinary people can't learn it. For an ordinary internal strength technique from the outer city, you can learn if you pay, the cheapest, also costs 30 taels. What, are you really considering it?" Master Chen said as he used his inner strength to dry the wood, looking at Li Che half-jokingly. "You just had a baby, better save your money, even if you buy the technique, learning it is another matter, and mastering it is yet another." Master Chen shook his head and kindly advised. Seeing that Li Che seemed seriously interested, Master Chen's eyebrows rose. "You're quite meticulous, young man. It's a pity you didn't try to learn wood carving when you were younger. If you want to buy an internal strength technique, come find me. I have one for 20 taels that you can learn." Li Che heard this but didn't agree right away, only saying with a smile that he would think about it. He then left Master Chen's workshop. In the following time, Li Che busied himself again, helping other wood carvers to transport lumber and finished wood carvings. He also helped the apprentices in the shop move small pieces of lumber to earn his wages. The shop provided lunch, simple though it was hot, and you could eat your fill to have the energy to work. In the evening, after receiving today's 35 dying cast copper coins, Li Che clocked out, exhausted. With a conical hat on his head, he braved the wind and snow, buying some charcoal on his way home. By the time he arrived at the crisscrossing alleys, night had completely fallen. However, the dim yellow light of the oil lamp from his earthen house made Li Che hasten his snow-treading steps a little. "Wife, I'm back." He quickly opened the door and just as rapidly closed it behind him, keeping the chilly wind carrying the white snow from rushing in and sweeping away the warmth. After adding some charcoal to the brazier, Li Che tiptoed to the bedside where Xixi laid in bed, round-eyed and awake. Seeing Li Che, Xixi even giggled with delight. Li Che's heart nearly melted as he picked her up and gently rocked her. Zhang Yi, with a tender gaze, watched this scene unfold and fetched for Li Che his dinner from the pot. The steaming noodles wafted a fragrance that filled the air. For the poor households, what luxury is there of maternity leave? Not having to work the land, simply preparing dinner, for Zhang Yi, that was maternity leave. After the couple had their dinner, Li Che told Zhang Yi to go rest, and he washed the dishes himself. Then he took a small piece of wood and a carving knife and returned to the house. With Xixi in her arms, Zhang Yi gently patted and comforted her while curiously watching Li Che. "Husband, what are you doing?" In the dim light of the oil lamp, Li Che flexed his 10 fingers, creating a cracking sound, and replied with a smile, "I've learned a thing or two at the wood carving shop recently." "Wife, behold." Hearing this, Zhang Ye couldn't help but laugh out loud. Husband, over the years you've learned quite a few things, but after a few days you always soberly say that putting them aside is also quite good. Li Chai's lips curved upward slightly. Wife, don't make fun of your husband. Have you heard of the legend 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west? Your husband is different now, I'm a father. Zhang Ye pursed her lips as laughter danced in her eyes. Does being a father necessarily connect to you learning wood carving? Li Chai just smiled, not saying another word. He briefly closed his eyes, and the carving techniques and skills of the six-eyed bodhisattva statue flooded his mind as if squeezing wet cotton, overflowing like water. Upon reopening his eyes, a glint seemed to flash within his gaze. Calm and composed, his fingers gripped the carving knife with muscular power as he made the first cut into the wood. Chapter 4, Immortal Artisan Upgrade, Bad News Arrives. The wood was offcuts he had brought back from the wood carving shop, just a small piece that no one paid much attention to when he took it home. The carving knife was what he had prepared when he had yearned to take up wood carving on his own years ago, custom made by the smith at the ironmongers in the west of the city. It wasn't cheap for a set, and now, at last, it was proving useful. The immortal artisan Dao fruit pulsed and jumped, stirring a godlike sense of assistance that welled up within him. Since it was a test of his skill, Li Chai did not opt to use ink lines for outlining but went straight to carving. With the help of the Dao fruit, he felt an intimate understanding of the six-eyed bodhisattva statue engraving, as if it were imprinted in his heart. Just like with Master Chen, it was as if he had carved hundreds, if not thousands, of six-eyed bodhisattva wood carvings, and practice makes perfect. He had his own control over every aspect of carving the wood, from the outer to the inner spatial forms, to the force exerted with each cut. However, since it was his first hands-on experience, there was still some rawness, but this rawness between his fingers, the carving knife, and the wood, was gradually smoothed out as the carving progressed and his skill improved. The knife work gradually became more graceful, even developing a unique charm and indication of mature skill. Mature carving skills require a continuous accumulation of experience. But it seemed as if through the immortal artisan Dao fruit, Li Chai was able to touch the six-eyed bodhisattva and, like a sponge, slowly absorb Master Chen's years of carving experience. The sound of the sharp knife friction against the wood was rustling and bustling. The oil lamp cracked and popped as shavings and scraps fell like rain, and in Li Chai's palm, a palm-sized, sharp-angled six-eyed bodhisattva statue began to take shape. Although unpolished, with very rough edges and lines, the form had already emerged with the skill of divine craftsmanship. Nearby, Zhang Ye, after having coaxed Xixi to sleep, gazed at Li Chai, who had carved a rough outline of the statue in just a short period, and her heart immediately filled with surprise. Watching Li Chai earnestly absorbed in his carving, Zhang Ye didn't dare interrupt, silently suppressing her curiosity. Deciding not to sleep, she sat by the bed, quietly watching under the oil lamp as Li Chai focused on his carving. The more she watched, her eyes grew slightly misty, her lips pursed, and a smile blossomed joyfully. She thought her husband might have long given up on wood carving, but unexpectedly. Her husband had never given up and had been diligently learning, and now, he had prepared a surprise for her in secret. Just don't know if my husband could become a wood carver at the wood carving shop, or even an apprentice. Then he wouldn't need to carry heavy wood and carvings every day with such hard work, she mused. Zhang Ye's wish was modest and simple, she only hoped her husband could earn the money to support the family more easily. Engrossed in his carving, Li Chai soon came back to his senses, as the six-eyed bodhisattva statue was completed and required no more cuts, although it was not polished and hence not a finished product. But within his heart, Li Chai was filled with great joy. Suddenly, as if sensing something, his spirit stirred. Dao fruit, immortal artisan, LV1, 10%. At. Li Chai's eyes brightened as he noticed the suffix of the Dao fruit immortal artisan, which seemed like an experience point indicator, had increased slightly. By carving a piece of wood carving, can I improve experience? Like a proficiency level? Or is it that I touched the six-eyed bodhisattva wood carving, learned the technique of the six-eyed bodhisattva statue, and succeeded in carving, thus gaining a 10% increase? This Dao fruit can actually be understood as just having formed and being immature. Only by nurturing it slowly can he unlock the true power of the Dao fruit. Li Chai pondered to himself. Regrettably, he did not bring back more wood, so he couldn't try it out immediately. He had to quell the curiosity within and stood up, stretching himself, only to see his wife Zhang Ye leaning against the headboard, dozing off. Li Che knew his wife was waiting for him to join her in sleep and felt a warmth in his heart. In this cold weather, he quickly blew out the oil lamp and, pulling his startled wife with him, dove into the warm blankets. Outside, the snow was falling heavily. Landing on the thick accumulation on the roof, it made a gentle sound, conducive to a very sound sleep. The next day, Li Che went to work at Su Ji's wood carving shop as he always did. "Master Chen, can I take this scrap home to practice with?" During a break, Li Che approached Master Chen and, seeing the offcuts from the carved flowering curved willow, he couldn't help but ask. Master Chen, with sawdust in his beard, glanced at Li Che. "You plan to learn wood carving? You do have a keen eye for it, and it's good material, pity you're a bit old for it. But, it's nice that you have the interest, you can take as much scrap from my carvings as you want." Li Che had been helping Master Chen for some years, so naturally the master was much more lenient towards him. Li Che, filled with joy, hastily expressed his gratitude and then began to select waste material he could use for practice. Master Chen glanced at him, smiled silently, shook his head, and continued to immerse himself in carving the 9 suns embracing the lotus. Li Che gathered the selected waste materials, wrapped them in cloth, and placed them at his workstation before running off to the yard, under the pretense of adjusting and moving the wood carvings, to touch them. The immortal artisan Dao fruit vibrated slightly. This time, the piece he touched was a wood carving named Spring Fills the Universe, which required extremely intricate craftsmanship and patience to carve lifelike leaves, depicting the essence of spring. After touching it, a familiar sensation surged in his heart. It was as if he saw a female woodcarver holding a carving knife, engraving the vast universe with her fingers in the palm of her hand as the spirit of spring bloomed from the wood. A stream of information on the techniques and skills related to the Spring Fills the Universe wood carving flooded his mind. Li Che was delighted. Just like with touching the six-eyed Bodhisattva statue, he had learned another style of wood carving. However, when he touched other wood carvings, the Dao fruit no longer reacted, indicating there was a daily limit to what he could learn. In the following days, Li Che focused on studying the immortal artisan Dao fruit. The immortal artisan with a divine touch, unparalleled in craftsmanship. By touching a statue, he could learn the wood carving techniques, and for every statue carved, he would gain 10% experience. However, each statue only provided experience once. This meant that Li Che would need to learn and carve 10 different wood carvings to level up the immortal craft Dao fruit to LV2. Understanding the use of the Dao fruit, Li Che felt greatly optimistic about his future. Days passed by, day after day. A month quickly went by. Xixi had her full moon celebration, her lively eyes blinking as she waved her chubby little hands in her swaddle, curiously observing the world. Li Che played with Xixi using a rattle drum he made himself, causing the little girl to laugh heartily with glee. Xixi loved to smile, her dimples showing when she did, just like her mother. Zhangya sat nearby, mending old clothes, watching the father and daughter interact with tenderness and satisfaction in her eyes. "Husband, have you spoken to the third shopkeeper at the wood carving shop about wanting to become a wood carver?" Zhangya inquired curiously. Over the past month, every night Li Che had been carving wood carvings of various kinds, which amazed Zhangya and made her aware of how exquisite her husband's craftsmanship was. Under her blind adoration, she even felt that her husband was much better than the apprentices at the wood carving shop, and even more so, no less skilled than the masters themselves. The third shopkeeper said, that we need to follow the rules. He wants me to undergo a wood carving assessment with the other students who have paid to learn, and only after passing can I join the shop and become a wood carver. Li Che said while playfully engaging Xixi, making her reach out her little hand to grab the rattle drum, and he responded to Zhang Ye's question. Zhang Ye nodded and said firmly with pursed lips, "I'm certain you can do it, husband." Li Che smiled, confident and spirited, with a glint of self-assurance in his eyes. With a thought. Dao fruit, immortal artisan, LV2, 8%. After a month of incessantly touching various wood carvings and working overtime at night to carve, he had finally leveled the Dao fruit up to LV2. At level 2, the immortal craft Dao fruit enhanced Li Che's ability from the aspect of conveying meaning. The wood carvings he sculpted could embody his own strong essences. Moreover, Li Che's dexterity had become incredibly impressive. His fingers were extremely nimble. It wasn't just woodworking, he was confident he could easily set up even the trickiest mechanized contraptions. After playing with Xixi for a while, Li Che went out to prepare for work. The snow had lessened a lot, signaling the end of a harsh winter. Yet the air was still cold and biting. As he stepped out of the cottage, a familiar figure appeared in the distance, holding a smoking pipe, frowning, dressed in a worn Confucian robe layered with a coat, hurrying over. "Uncle!" Li Che called out. His uncle, influenced by a preference for sons over daughters, had not visited Xixi in a month since learning she was a girl, although the great aunt had come once, bringing some eggs for Zhangye to nourish her body. "Che, are you about to go to work?" "That's just as well," the old scholar uncle said, his brows still furrowed. Li Che nodded and then saw the old scholar hesitate for a moment before speaking. "Che, have you heard? That grandmale who helped deliver Xiaoye killed several children. It's said, all the ones she killed were children she'd delivered." Chapter 5, Spirit Infant Master, One Cut Master. Grandmale, kill infants? Specifically targeting the infants she helped to deliver? When Li Che heard his uncle's words, chills ran down his spine and his pupils suddenly constricted. "Uncle, where did you hear this?" Li Che took a deep breath, his heart sinking, and quickly asked. The old scholar, with a smoking pipe in his mouth, puffing out hazy smoke, frowned deeply into a Chuan character. "I didn't believe it at first, but Xixi was delivered by Grandmale, wasn't she? So, I went out of my way to ask around. It's true, the families of those deceased children, they all made a fuss at the government office of the outer city. The government has issued a warrant, and they're actively searching for Grandmale. If you don't believe me, you can go and see the notice board at the government office yourself, the warrant is hanging right there." The voice of the old scholar was also much more serious. Although he was regretful that Xixi wasn't a boy, she was still a seedling of the Li family. Hearing such news, his first thought was to worry about Xixi's safety. It's said that this Grandmale, worshipped the Spirit Infant Master, believed in the teachings of the Spirit Infant sect, and just like that, killing, it's really a sin, they're just children. The old scholar's voice trembled slightly, and he let out a long sigh, continuously drawing on his smoking pipe. Li Che's expression became extremely grave, and his heart was suspended in worry. For Li Che now, Xixi was the apple of his eye, his most treasured daughter. If anything happened to her, Li Che would be heartbroken and blame himself. Protecting his daughter was the duty of a father, the responsibility he must bear. "Thank you, uncle. I'll find out more and make preparations early," Li Che said earnestly. The old scholar nodded quickly, then rubbed his hands together. "Since I'm here, I might as well visit Xixi." Li Che was speechless, looking at the bashful old scholar. He didn't say much and led him into the house. When the old scholar saw Xixi, his old face was all smiles, as if blossoming into a flower. He verbally disapproved of Xixi not being a boy, but his fondness for Xixi was genuine. "Your sister-in-law is due soon, and your mother says her belly is pointy, which should mean a boy. I hope the kid will be as lovely as Xixi," the uncle said, beaming with joy. His eldest son had married, and his child was also due to be born this year. "Wife, while I'm not at home during this time, you have to lock the doors and windows properly, don't open them for anyone no matter who calls." After sending away the old scholar, Li Che, before heading off to work, specifically reminded Zhangye. Zhangye was stunned, but she didn't ask any questions, just obediently indicated that she would do as told. Worried, Li Che arrived at the notice board of the government office and indeed saw the wanted posted for Grandmale. Lei Chunlin, killed 7 children, all of whom she had delivered a year ago. Delivered a year ago. So do all these murdered children need to meet the 1-year-old requirement? Wearing a conical hat, Li Che looked at the notice and fell into deep thought. But he did not dare to place his trust in his own deductions. What if Lei Chunlin chose to strike at children who had just turned a month old? Li Che couldn't take that risk. And he couldn't afford to. It seems that I must become a wood-carving master at the wood-carving shop. If I have the protection of Sue's wood-carving shop, at least I'll be safe. Li Che took a deep breath, pressed his hat down, and headed for Sue's wood-carving shop. As soon as he arrived at the wood-carving shop, he saw Master Chen, with white hair and beard but a ruddy complexion, sitting in a chair, humming a tune and drinking from a gourd. "Little Li, you've come? I heard you're going to take part in the wood-carving assessment. Haha, you've got guts, daring to take the test after just a month of self-study," Master Chen said with a chuckle as he saw Li Che. Master Chen's full name was Chen Dabao, now 68 years old, and he was a senior master at Su Ji's wood-carving shop. Chen Dabao had long qualified to join Suji's in the inner city, but he never wanted to go, preferring to stay in the wood carving shop in the outer city. It wasn't just Chen Dabao, but the other wood carving masters in the shop felt the same way. This left Li Che puzzled. Why wouldn't they go to the inner city? He heard that living conditions and everything else in the inner city were far better than in the outer city. You young man! Despite its appeal, the inner city is also fraught with danger. Now, the world is in chaos, evil spirits are rampant, the mysterious temple stands tall, various sects are rising, and the imperial court is unstable. The court's control over many cities has long declined, thus each city has fallen under the control of local noble families. Among these nobles, there is endless strife and friction over the control of the cities and the vast interests they hold. For us old bones, entering the inner city is like stepping into a maelstrom, which we can't withstand. Here in the outer city, although conditions are somewhat worse, relying on my own inner strength, I can still live comfortably. Master Chen took a blissful sip from the gourd of old yellow wine, smacking his lips as he spoke. Li Che nodded, somewhat understanding Master Chen's thoughts. In the mountain where no tigers roam, the monkey is crowned king. Staying unassuming is key. Suddenly, Li Che thought of something and asked softly, Master Chen, have you heard of the spirit infant master? Master Chen paused in his drinking, furrowed his brows, and glanced at Li Che. You little one, are you worshipping that thing? Li Che hurriedly shook his head and recounted the news his uncle had told him that morning. My daughter was delivered by Lei Chunlin, and I'm worried, Li Che said anxiously. Upon hearing this, Master Chen's expression became serious. It seems, another disciple has fallen into heresy. Since the spirit infant sect, born from the mysterious temple, entered Fei Lei City, the number of child deaths has greatly increased. That midwife must have worshipped the spirit infant master, having her mind bewitched. Using these children she personally delivered as sacrifices to the spirit baby. The birthing, it's like a ritual. Once targeted, it's hard to shake off. That midwife will not easily let go of your child. With Master Chen's affirmation, Li Che's expression turned grim and unsightly, his fingers clenched into fists, his breathing grew heavier. However, based on your description, those children who died had all been born a year before, seemingly requiring to be nearly 1 year old to qualify for the ritual. Thus, for this year, your child should be safe. But you'll still need to keep a close watch to prevent the midwife from secretly taking your child, waiting for the right time to carry out her evil sacrifice. Having seen many such cases, Master Chen spoke with a somewhat detached tone. All he could do was offer a warning. As for helping Li Che, setting aside whether he could actually be of assistance, even just considering the nature of their relationship, it wasn't that deep. To put it plainly, Li Che was nothing more than a laborer who moved lumber in the wood carving shop, nothing more. Li Che was well aware of this and did not ask for help. If he really did ask for help, and Master Chen refused, the already thin relationship between them would be completely severed. Master Chen, if I became a wood carver at the wood carving shop, would the shop take care of it? Li Che took a deep breath and asked. Master Chen took a sip of his wine and glanced at Li Che. If you became a wood carver, all your problems would be solved. The shop provides living quarters for wood carvers, you could move your wife and child over, under the protection of the wood carving shop. Within the shop's compound, if that midwife dares to show up, she would definitely be killed on the spot. Us wood carvers possess inner strength, even if that midwife has the support of the spirit infant master's evil techniques, we have nothing to fear. If you truly became a wood carver, even just a lowest rank one cut master, I would count as your neighbor. Should that wicked midwife dare to make a move, I'll slap her to death for you. Master Chen wiped the wine stains from his beard, grinning to reveal a mouthful of fierce, yellow teeth, showing a bit of ferocity. But soon, the ferocity faded, his fingers lightly tapping the well-used gourd of wine, humorously looking at Li Che. The premise is, you, young man, have what it takes to become a wood carver. It's difficult. How do you think you, with a mere 10 days or a few months of self-study done on a whim, can surpass those apprentices in the shop who've spent a great deal of silver and have been learning wood carving since they were young? Chapter 6, Interest Challenges Career, Tang Family Mechanism. Although Chen Dabao got on well with Li Che, as a carrier who moved timber and completed statues every day, he saw no hope in the master's assessment. At least, from Chen Dabao's perspective, he couldn't see any hope for Li Che to become a formal wood carving master. Even if Li Che picked up scraps of wood from the shop to practice carving after finishing work and returning home. But learning wood carving, how could that be easy? According to Li Che's situation, one could only say he had an interest in wood carving and hadn't learned it formally. And using one's interest to challenge another's profession and livelihood, that was somewhat arrogant. Li Che didn't offer any explanation for himself, nor did he argue about anything. What did he have to argue with? In his eyes, light flickered, and the immortal craft Dao fruit in his heart throbbed slightly, seeming to radiate heat, casting light on his straightforward future. He did have something to rely on. Little Li, if I were you, I'd try to learn some basic martial arts techniques this year. Even if you lack the physical strength, you could at least step up to protect the child and throw a punch when necessary. Chen Dabao stood up, patted Li Che's shoulder, and then went back into the workshop to continue carving wood. Li Che pondered for a moment and actually found Chen Dabao's advice quite sensible. Basic martial arts techniques, to learn them I would need a way, but with the immortal craft Dao fruit, maybe. I could design some mechanical traps to serve as a precaution. Although that Grand Malay usually targets children 1 year after birth, what if something happens unexpectedly? Li Che took a deep breath, his mind filled with plans. Without overthinking, he continued with his work, moving timber and statues. Perhaps because others had learned that Li Che would also take part in the wood carving assessment, many apprentices cast strange and wary looks his way, with quite a few even refusing to let Li Che move their carved woodworks. For a time, Li Che actually found himself with less to do in the wood carving shop. Except for a few old masters and regular customers still looking for him, most people basically ignored him. Li Che was happy to be unoccupied and began to ponder over mechanical traps. But after brooding for a while, he was clueless. He felt that he needed to seek out old Chen, who likely had a way. Mechanical traps? You want to rig up some traps to protect your kid? That's an idea, not unfeasible. But setting up mechanical traps is a matter of learning, and I myself don't understand the more complex ones. However, there is an ancient record about mechanisms in my home's library. Old Chen stopped his carving and said with a smile when Li Che asked his question. Li Che rubbed his hands together, eyes lighting up. The matter of Master Chen having a library at home was known to many in the shop. It was said to contain many precious ancient books. Old Chen glanced at Li Che and raised a finger. You can borrow the ancient record, but I, Old Chen, never engage in a loss-making trade. This ancient book is extremely rare and quite precious, 1 tael of silver for 1 day's loan. 1 tael of silver a day? Li Che took in a deep breath, it certainly wasn't cheap. But Li Che quickly nodded decisively and agreed. Oh, so decisive. You are a good father indeed, willing to go all out for the safety of your daughter. If you tried to haggle with me, it wouldn't be 1 tael a day. For the sake of your fatherly love, you don't need to pay a tael, just give this old man 50 Great Vista cast copper coins for a day. Chen Dabao stroked his beard and smiled. When Li Che heard that, he couldn't help but be overjoyed, and quickly thanked Chen Dabao who could complain about having too much money. It was best to save where one could. Bring it tomorrow and remember to bring enough money. Chen Dabao said and then went back to his carving. As time passed, the sky gradually darkened. Li Che collected his wages for the day, just 15 copper coins, about a third less than usual. Yet, it didn't bother him. After taking the money, he carefully packed up the wood scraps he had picked out and carried them away from the shop. Now, taking home some wood waste to carve for immortal craft experience had become a habit for Li Che every day. He had touched a new wood carving today, which should help him gain some more experience. Because of Grand Malay's threat to kill newborn babies, a cloud hung over his head like an unshakable shadow, giving Li Che a sense of urgency to improve himself quickly. He hastened home, and seeing his wife Zhangya playing with their daughter Xixi on the bed with various small wooden toys he had carved, his anxious heart finally relaxed. Xixi, did you miss Daddy? Li Che's heart settled, and he approached the bed with open arms and a radiant smile. The month-old Xixi was carved from jade, her tender whiteness enchanting, her entire being scented with the fragrance of milk. Lying on the bed, she continuously babbled ya and waved her hands and feet about. Li Che laughed as he picked up the little girl, strolling through the confines of the room, drawing constant giggles of delight from her. After entertaining Xixi for a while, Zhangya also had dinner ready. After dinner, Li Che, by the light of an oil lamp, took out some scrap wood and began to engage in the wood carving for the day. In fact, the wood carving shop had just so many types, and as Li Che touched each one, now it might take several days to find a new skill from the wood carving master. Because his immortal artisan Dao fruit had reached LV2, he carved each wood carving much faster now. Dao fruit, immortal artisan, LV2, 9%. The experience had risen a little bit more. The corners of Li Che's lips lifted, and immediately his eyes became focused, planning to try his hand at creating a mechanism. However, having no concept of mechanisms, he thought of the highly deadly crossbow arrow and began to scribble on paper, making a design drawing. Dawn's light emerged faintly, the east exhibiting a pale glow. In the dark mountainside beyond, the clouds churned, and a vast expanse of snow drifted down unsteadily, dressing the whole Feilei city in a layer of white. Li Che got up early and, after washing up, started to prepare breakfast. When Zhangya got up to help, Li Che gently pushed her back to bed. The child was fussing all night, you had to comfort her to sleep. You should get some more rest, mistress. You can eat when you wake up. Li Che tenderly patted Zhangya's disheveled black hair, her face still hazy with sleep, and Zhangya pressed her lips together in a nod before lying back down. After Li Che finished everything, he put the breakfast in the still warm pot to heat. Then he left the mud brick house, stepping on the thick snow as he headed toward the wood carving shop. Walking on the cobbled streets, the wind and snow howled but could not drown out the chimes and clangs, the horns and suanas playing loudly. The Holy Spirit teaches us, to cleanse the mortal dust, the reincarnation without worries technique, for only the wise, is naturally mastered. The chanting came drifting down the long street, accompanied by the continuous footsteps crunching on the snowy cobblestones. Li Che squinted his eyes, standing by the side of the road. He pulled down his hat brim and glanced at the long procession of followers carrying a vermilion shrine. In the shrine sat a strange, lifelike statue of a three-headed, six-armed child, whose eyes were bright. It was clearly the work of a master. Observing the procession and the group of white-clad believers following behind, men and women, old and young, all their faces withered and carrying a mad fervor. Spirit Infant Sect. Li Che took a deep breath, a flicker of ferocity in his eyes. No matter who the Spirit Infant Master was, his daughter Xixi was his treasure, his everything. The warm bed with his wife and child was what he wanted to protect. If they dared to harm Xixi, it meant they wanted his family destroyed, his home gone. Even if it meant his death, Li Che would rip a chunk of flesh from them. Clenching his fist, Li Che braved the wind and the snow, heading straight for Su's wood carving shop. In this moment, the desire to become a formal woodcarver at the wood carving shop surged intensely within Li Che. Not merely because becoming a woodcarver would mean getting a house and the shop's protection, but also because it would qualify him to learn the internal strength techniques and martial arts taught by the shop. The immortal craft Dao fruit, although it had given Li Che a considerable boost, was ultimately just an enhancement of his talent in crafts. It wasn't much help in terms of personal martial strength. Upon arriving at the shop, the atmosphere was tense. Many apprentices hadn't started working yet, each preserving his energy for something. Li Che instantly understood that the wood carving assessment was likely to take place today. Chen Dabao was drinking from a gourd filled with old yellow wine, sitting on a bench in the distance with his legs crossed, humming to himself joyfully. "Little Li, come here." When old Chen saw Li Che, he waved him over. Li Che's eyes lit up, sweeping away the gloom brought on by sighting the spirit baby procession, and he quickly walked over. Old Chen pulled out a yellowed, well-worn book from his bosom. "This Tang's Mechanism Essentials is one of my collectible ancient books. I haven't studied it much, but there are many secret techniques for mechanisms inside. They require quite a bit of skill with your hands, and some even need internal strength and martial arts to assist. Of course, you could try the simple mechanisms, which are mostly manageable even for those without martial strength." "Thank you, old Chen," Li Che said, his face flushed with excitement. After handing over 50 copper coins to Chen Dabao, he took the book. And the moment his fingertips touched the ancient tome, within his chest, the Dao fruit immortal artisan began to beat with vitality. Chapter 7, Four-armed Bodhisattva holding child statue. It seems there's something of value. This ancient book might be of great help to the immortal artisan Dao fruit. Suppressing the turmoil in his heart caused by the Dao fruit, Li Che took a deep breath. His mind was agitated, yet he did not probe further. As the sound of the gong being struck echoed, everyone in the wood carving shop put down what they were holding, and the atmosphere became heavy. The door to the courtyard was opened, and the wind and snow rushed in, followed by several figures bustling through. The two leading figures were clad in fox fur cloaks and wearing headbands, their eyes sharp and imposing, exuding a strong aura that seemed as if it could captivate one's soul just by looking at them. Their vitality was robust, and the snow and wind did not cling to them. Even as they walked through the snow, not a single flake seemed to touch them. These two were none other than the second shopkeeper and the third shopkeeper of Su's wood carving shop. Usually, the third shopkeeper, Su Yu, was in charge of Su's wood carving shop in the outer city, while the main shopkeeper, Su Heli, and the second shopkeeper, Su Baihu, resided in the inner city. Today, for the examination, the second shopkeeper Su Baihu had personally come. Su's wood carving shop in the inner city was by no means weak, in fact, it could be described as formidable. This was mainly because these three shopkeepers were all top-notch, each possessing considerable strength. Once inside the shop, they removed their fox fur cloaks and sat down in the taishi chairs, casually scanning the apprentices who gathered together in the shop. The annual examination for wood carving masters in our shop happens once a year, and we recruit 3 apprentices each time. After becoming a one-cut wood carving master, a monthly salary of 5 taels can be claimed, and for the carved products sold, the shop takes 40% while the rest goes to the individual. Of course, after becoming a wood carver, there will be an annual evaluation. For each additional cut made, the shop's share decreases by 10%, and the monthly salary increases. The third shopkeeper, Su Yu, sat with a serene posture, his eyes sweeping across the room. He was fair-skinned and of a gentle demeanor. By contrast, the second shopkeeper, Su Baihu, lived up to his name North Tiger, with an overwhelming presence. He sat upright with broad shoulders and a strong back like a bamboo pole, his body exuding a fiery vitality. After the third shopkeeper finished speaking, the second shopkeeper also opened his mouth, and his voice boomed like a bell, stirring up waves of air in the room as if wind and waves were lashing out. To become an official woodcarver of the shop means having the qualification to practice martial arts and to cultivate inner strength. If you want to go farther and higher in the field of wood carving, inner strength is essential. Our Su's wood carving shop has been in Falay City for 200 years, and without some ability in martial arts, it wouldn't be possible to safeguard this family business. Furthermore, by choosing to participate in the examination, you agree to join Su's wood carving shop and become one of Su Ji's people. If there is any betrayal, do not blame us for being ruthless. I, Su Baihu, detest traitors the most. His rough words thundered through the room, intimidating the hearts and minds of every apprentice present. Li Che also felt a chill in his heart. Now, those who wish to continue with the examination, come forward to register and receive your examination materials. After the stern warning of the second shopkeeper Su Baihu, the gentle voice of the third shopkeeper, Su Yu, sounded as if one was basking in the spring breeze. The many apprentices hurried forward in an orderly manner, registering their names and receiving materials. Little Li, go ahead, old Chen said with a smile and a sip of his drink, squinting his eyes. After giving a bow with his hands clenched in front of him, Li Che too went to register. Li Che. The third shopkeeper Su Yu, who was in charge of registration, was slightly surprised to see Li Che actually come forward to register. A few days ago, when Li Che came to him, he hadn't taken it seriously. After all, every year, there were laborers who envied the high earnings of woodcarvers and sought the opportunity to participate in the examination, but most gave up after trying to carve a few times. It was pretty rare for someone like Li Che to actually come and register for the examination. Was it a lack of self-awareness or, did he truly possess genuine skills? There have been precedents of laborers turning into woodcarvers. I hope you can give me a surprise. Do your best, Su Yu, being a gentle person, encouraged him. Li Che nodded, selected a piece of wood, and found a workstation to stand by. When all the candidates had chosen their wood, the third shopkeeper Su Yu stood with his hands behind his back, surveying everyone, and said indifferently, the task for this wood carving examination, is to create a 4-armed bodhisattva holding a child statue. No sooner had he spoken than the third shopkeeper unveiled the red cloth covering the wood carving on the table, revealing its true form. A statue of a 4-armed bodhisattva holding a child stood on the table with its 4 arms outstretched in different postures, one hand performing a sealing technique, one holding a pure jade vase, one pinching a wish-fulfilling gesture, and the last arm embracing a laughing boy with an upturned braid. Hiss! A collective gasp of surprise came from the mouths of the many apprentices. This year's examination topic, was it really this difficult? Even the old masters who were watching the excitement showed expressions of astonishment. In previous years, the exam had always involved ordinary bodhisattva statues, but this year added a child being held, and the requirement of 4 arms. For wood carving, each additional arm significantly increased the difficulty in controlling the overall work, the error rate, and the test of carving skills. Hard, hard, hard. Master Chen smacked his lips and said, Li Chai's luck really has hit rock bottom. This exam question can't be bluffed through. Li Chai stared at the 4-armed bodhisattva statue and felt a slight relief in his heart. Lucky. It was a type he had touched before. Stable. Old Chen's previously completed 9 suns embracing the lotus, which had earned him 150 taels, had already been felt by Li Chai. This allowed Li Chai to learn child sculpting, and the 6-eyed bodhisattva statue had provided him with the bodhisattva carving skills. The only shortcoming was the 4 arms. But as a LV2 Dao fruit immortal craftsman, Li Chai was confident he could carve it out. The main focus should be on putting more effort into the artistic conception. Li Chai began to make plans for his own assessment. He didn't need to hide his skills, but when it came to something as profound as artistic conception, that could only be attributed to talent. A laborer, if he were to display carving skills not inferior to those of a wood carving shop's master, it would ultimately be hard to explain. The assessment time is 4 hours. When the time is up, everyone must stop carving immediately. Violators will be disqualified. Do you understand? Second shopkeeper Su Baihu stood up, his presence commanding as he issued the warning. All the apprentices, including Li Chai, responded in turn. The Suji wood carving apprentice examination in the outer city starts now. Su Baihu waved his hand grandly, and his strong chi surged throughout the shop. Carving the 4-armed bodhisattva holding child statue in 4 hours was a tight schedule and not very generous. Therefore, the apprentices dared not waste time. Holding their pieces of wood, they began to outline and trace their figures with ink. These pieces of wood had all been dried, saving some steps. Li Chai placed the wood on the workbench and reached out to touch it, visualizing the outer and inner contours in his mind. After a moment, he dipped his wolf's hair brush in ink and began to draw lines on the wood. The workbench was prepared with axes, mallets, saws, files, and other tools for carving the rough shape. Carving the rough shape involves summarizing the conceived forms into simple geometric bodies. Concepts such as layers, dynamics, proportions, and center of gravity must all be included in the rough shape. Carving the rough shape is very important and is also the most demanding test of talent. Moments later, after the apprentices had finished their outlines, they started the ding-dong sound of knocking and carving. Immortal artisan Dao fruit vibrated, and Li Chai closed his eyes and then reopened them. His entire demeanor seemed to have undergone a drastic change. Old Chen, holding a gourd of liquor by his side, paused for a moment, as the transformation in Li Chai's temperament occurred the instant he picked up the carving knife, looking at Li Chai as if looking at his younger self. This kid has put on quite a convincing display of temperament, Chen Dabao muttered to himself. However, as Li Chai began carving, outlining the rough shape, Chen Dabao squinted his eyes. Scrap wood chips fell in showers, the sharp blade tore into the wood, ripping apart the links between the wood's tissues, leaving marks. The rough lines had already sketched out the overall rough shape of the image. Time slipped away like sand through the fingers, dropping grain by grain with the rustling sound of sand. Third shopkeeper Su Yu walked with his hands behind his back, his pace neither hurried nor slow, slowly passing each apprentice's workbench, inspecting the progress and standard of their work. Suddenly, Su Yu's steps halted as he glanced at Chen Dabao, who stood stock still as if he were a statue, and was slightly taken aback. Following Chen Dabao's gaze, he saw the courageous laborer Li Chai. Why are you so engrossed? Su Yu became curious. What could captivate Chen Dabao, the senior 4-cuts master, to pause in his tracks? Could it be that this laborer really had something special? Su Yu walked over, hands still clasped behind his back, gradually approaching. His eyes drooped downward, falling upon Li Chai who was focused on carving, then shifted. They fell onto the wood carving on the workbench. Chapter 8, Wood Carving Prodigy, Inner Strength Divinity. Third shopkeeper Su Yu narrowed his eyes, a hint of amazement flashing through his gentle gaze. He looked at the rough prototype of the 4-armed bodhisattva holding child statue that was being outlined. Although it was only a prototype and the lines were rough, the whole statue already emanated a unique form of beauty. That was the flavor of meaning. The expression, the posture, the demeanor, they were all strikingly palpable. It was as if there truly was a compassionate four-armed bodhisattva, cradling a child with one arm, eyelids drooping, one hand forming the rebirth mantra, another holding the pure jade vase, and yet another grasping a jade ruyi. Was this really carved by a laborer? Su Yu nodded slightly. As the third shopkeeper of the wood carving shop, he had handled countless wood carvings and had a high level of appreciation for the styles and techniques of many veteran carvers. In Li Che's four-armed bodhisattva, there were many carving techniques imbuing Chen Dabao's style and flavor. The talent was astonishing. Li Che had not spent silver to learn wood carving at the shop, and it was clear that Chen Dabao would not have kindly taught him. This meant, everything was self-taught by Li Che. By day he needed to move timber and finished statues in the wood carving shop, and only at night did he have time to go back and carve, meaning he only learned during the evenings, yet he managed to reach such a level. The lines of the carving and processing are still slightly flawed, but what's truly valuable is the inherent meaning. The four-armed bodhisattva carved by little Li is extremely rich in meaning, as though it came to life. This is a natural talent. Chen Dabao clicked his tongue, returning to his senses only after sensing the arrival of third shopkeeper Su Yu, astonished. Indeed, the most important aspect of wood carving is the charm. Without it, no matter how good the technique or how superb the skills, it's still just a piece of junk wood. Su Yu nodded in approval. He's a good seedling, and Li Che's technique is not bad either, it merely lacks a bit of the veteran carver's finesse, but it is much better than the apprentices. It seems our Su's wood carving shop is about to produce a genius. Su Yu's lips curled up, his smile brightening splendidly. Our Su's wood carving shop, being able to rank at the forefront in Feilei City, owes not only to the Su family, the biggest reason is that the carvings produced by Su's are full of charm, allowing those young masters in the city to refine and extract divinity. Such individuals who possess immense talent in capturing the charm of wood carving, we at Su's will definitely grasp and nurture them well. Su Yu stood with his hands behind his back, quietly watching Li Che's carving for a while. From the technique of the carving knife to the deepening overall charm of the wood carving as the engraving progressed, confirming that it was indeed created by Li Che, Su Yu had his answer. Li Che was also aware of Su Yu's presence and his assessment. His heart couldn't help but be startled. He had already restrained his carving technique quite a bit, yet it seemed he was still far better than the apprentices in the shop, standing out like a crane amongst chickens. It was his first time gauging his control, still inexperienced. However, from the third shopkeeper's reaction, it seemed his advancement to becoming a woodcarver was assured. 4 hours silently passed amidst the rasping sound of the carving knife tearing through wood. Ding! Accompanied by a gong-like explosion. Sitting in a taishi chair and sipping tea, second shopkeeper Su Baihu, with his burly figure, suddenly stood up, his fierce blood essence surging turbulently. The hour has come. Everyone, halt! The assessment is over. If I see anyone else make a move with a knife, their qualification will be nullified. Their results void. The domineering voice, rough yet intimidating. All the wood-carving apprentices hurriedly stopped their work, some trembling and looking with dread at Su Baihu, whose eyes swept over the crowd like a tiger, falling silent as cicadas in winter. Li Che too put down his grinding stick, stopping his work on the four-armed bodhisattva holding child statue, and let out a long sigh, feeling a slight pity. If only he had a moment longer, he could have finished polishing it, and the statue would have been a completed product. The third and second shopkeepers, accompanied by several veteran carvers from the shop, began evaluating the wood carvings of many apprentices. The evaluation, though not too strict, was quite fair. Only when coming across an extremely poor piece, one that in 4 hours managed only a rough prototype without its proper form, would they scold a few words. Chen Dabao followed in the group, squinting his eyes, and when he came to Li Che's station and saw the four-armed bodhisattva, rising majestically from a pile of wood chips on the workspace, almost completed in form through polishing. Many of the veteran carvers began to marvel. Quite a rarity, a laborer actually possessing such knife skills and standards. The apprentices I've taught really learned nothing of value. A talent indeed, it's truly a pity that he hasn't been formally trained in wood carving over these years. He started late, but the meaning imbued in his carvings. I'd believe it if you told me they were carved by a three-knife master. Praise was never in short supply. Su Yu looked at Li Che with a gentle expression, a flicker of admiration in his eyes as he nodded slightly, not bad. Li Che bowed with his fists clasped, his expression calm, not losing himself in the praise. The group continued to appreciate the work, and moments later, all the assessments were completed. Li Che, Zhao Xian, Wang Zhenpin, the three of you have distinguished yourselves in this assessment and can be granted the title of one-cut wood carver. Your monthly salary will be 5 taels, divided into 60%. Upon Su Yu reading out the 3 names, the shop suddenly erupted into a buzz. When the final results settled, many apprentices were visibly distressed, some disoriented, others shedding tears. Years of hard study had ultimately failed to pass the assessment, and being surpassed, even overwhelmed by a laborer threw them off balance. The small shop displayed 100 human emotions. The 3 of you, follow me. Su Yu and Su Baihu donned their fox fur cloaks and glanced over the 3 who had passed the assessment. Li Che and the other 2 apprentices quickly followed, stepping into the swirling snow, walking deeper into the courtyard. They passed through a corridor, arriving in a spacious yard that appeared to be a flattened practice field, filled with snow-covered stone stumps and other martial arts equipment. This place serves as the martial arts area for Su Ji's wood carving shop in the outer city. Becoming a wood carver of the shop means you are one of us. From now on, you can enter this area with a jade talisman knife that signifies your status as one-cut wood carvers, to practice martial arts and inner strength, preparing to reach the higher levels of wood carvers. Everyone, standing in the courtyard amidst flying snow. After distributing 3 jade knives to them, Su Yu stood with his hands clasped behind, and Su Baihu, the second shopkeeper, began to speak. I will conduct the martial arts training. Each month, I will take 2 days off to come to the outer city. If you have any questions about martial arts during that time, you can ask me. His voice was like a large bell, his vitality robust. Standing in the heavy snow, not a flake touched him. Li Che and the others quickly responded. Now, let's start discussing the martial path. Martial arts training is divided into 3 types: body refinement technique, internal strength technique, and the divine method. The divine method is beyond your reach and not something you are qualified to contact. Body refinement is available to everyone, while internal strength somewhat depends on talent and requires time to accumulate. I will teach you the body refinement technique now. As for the internal strength technique, you'll wait until your body refinement reaches the skin grinding level. Then, I will teach it to you, so you can try. Su Baihu said indifferently. He immediately began to explain the body refinement technique, which in fact, involved some austere practices using external tools to refine the body. The various equipment in the practice field all served this purpose. The body refinement technique involves skin grinding, sinew transforming, bone tempering, and blood exchange. Once you can circulate your body's blood and energy, transforming it as fluid as quicksilver, you are considered a master in this area. As for the stage above blood exchange channel opening, it is rarely achieved by anyone in this city. Starting with skin grinding, every half-month you can get a bowl of boiling skin powder. If that's not enough, you can buy it yourself, 1 bowl for 1 silver tael to accelerate your body refinement pace. Su Baihu taught earnestly, and Li Che listened just as earnestly. This was his first encounter with the martial arts of this world, and naturally, he did not dare to neglect it. The threat from the spirit infant master, like a knife hanging over his head, kept him from relaxing his vigilance. Practicing martial arts would enhance his ability to stand against the spirit infant master, and he dared not be negligent. When the sky turned completely dark, Su Baihu finally ended today's teaching. He would stay another day in the outer city tomorrow to teach everyone martial arts. Disperse now, digest well the knowledge of the martial path I have imparted, and tomorrow we officially start the skin grinding practice. Su Baihu said solemnly, waving his hand grandly before turning to leave. However, Li Che did not leave but found the 3rd shopkeeper to inquire about moving. Chapter 9, 3-headed, 6-armed spirit infant statue, mechanical sleeve crossbow. You want to move into the wood carving shop. Now that you are a wood carver, naturally you can. However, some procedures still need to be followed. I've instructed someone to expedite these for you. Check out the courtyard in a couple of days. 3rd shopkeeper Su Yu greatly admired Li Che's talent. The wood carvings he produced were deeply meaningful, such a talent. For any wood carving shop, it was extremely precious and desirous. Because of this, wood carvers had the chance to grow into wood carving masters. Therefore, as for Li Che's request, he naturally would not refuse, even somewhat eager to comply. Genius, indeed, deserved the treatment for genius. Thank you, 3rd shopkeeper. Li Che sincerely clasped his hands. Su Yu nodded and, along with Su Baihu, faded into the snowstorm and disappeared. Li Che let out a long breath of warm air, and couldn't help but show a hint of a smile on his face. The threat from Spirit Infant sect would be much less after moving into the wood carving shop. He returned to the shop, collected his hat, and received his monthly salary as a wood carver, totaling 5 taels of silver. The third shopkeeper had said, from now on, this day of the month would be the time to distribute the monthly salary. Amid the envious and awestruck gazes of the other apprentices, Li Che packed up his belongings, ready to go home and tell his wife and daughter the good news. However, before leaving, he shamelessly edged closer to Master Chen. Master Chen, may I take some scraps back to practice with? Chen Dabao was drinking from his gourd, and his face sullened. From now on, you two are a carver of the shop. Our friendship aside, don't call me Master Chen anymore, call me Old Chen. These materials, you can take as you please, even if you like, you can pick them from the courtyard. As long as it's not too large a piece, you can take it back to practice with. Chen Dabao had clearly seen Li Che's talent, and knew how important it was to establish good relations. Being of such an age, he was naturally sharp and would not easily offend people. By the way, when you choose a courtyard, call me along. I'll have a look and we can be neighbors, Old Chen said with a laugh. Good spirits accompany good fortune. Li Che was in an excellent mood. After becoming a wood carver, his wages had increased, and he saw a hopeful future. Riches and a comfortable life for his wife and daughter were no longer just a dream. Walking along the long street of Filii outer city, stepping on the piled white snow, he arrived at the shop, bought 2 taels of liquor, then went on to cut some pig's head meat and marinated beef, heading home. The sky darkened, and the street lights were sparse. From a distance, Li Che could see the weak oil lamplight of his family's earthen house. Thinking of his adorable daughter, trying to talk at the moment, he couldn't help but lift the corners of his lips. When he got to the front of the earthen house, he reached out his hand to call his wife, Zhang Yi, to open the door. But then, Li Che caught something out of the corner of his eye. His breathing halted, and the air around him seemed to freeze. His neck felt as stiff as if it were twisted slowly. His gaze landed on the lower left corner of the wooden door. There, on the thick snow, was a quietly placed small wood carving. A 3-headed, 6-armed child sat on a lotus seat. His expression seemed to be both smiling and not smiling, his lips slightly raised, one eye open and the other closed. Looking at it a long time, Li Che even heard the illusion of a child's crying and laughing near his ear. Spirit Infant Master. Li Che's face grew stern, and he fiercely surveyed his surroundings, his glaring eyes filled with ferocity. So, they were targeting us already. XIXI was just a month old. Lei Chunlin. Where are you? Come out. But all around was silent, only the sound of the falling snow and the babbling from inside the house, XIXI's voice learning to talk. Reaching out, he picked up the wood carving. It was just an ordinary wood carving. But it had signaled something different to Li Che. The joy in his heart instantly withered and froze. Just as a thief would scout and mark a place ahead of stealing. Perhaps, the other party had similar intentions. Li Che's face clouded with thought, and after a moment, he threw the Spirit Infant wood carving into the firewood room, planning to bring it to the wood carving shop tomorrow to ask about it. After finishing everything, only then did his joyful expression return. Coming home, one should always bring good news rather than bad. Husband, you're back. Zhang Yi opened the door, letting the snow and wind squeeze in, and upon seeing Li Che carrying wine and meat in his hands, her eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise. She knew her husband must have some happy news to share with her. When she learned that Li Che had become the wood carving master at Su's wood carving shop, she couldn't help but cheer like a young girl, hugging Li Che's waist and jumping up and down, grinding against Li Che. His heart galloped with excitement. Husband, we must celebrate properly tonight. Zhang Yi lifted her smooth chin, her face full of smiles. Li Che wrapped his arms around her, a mischievous smile curling up at the corner of his lips. Wife, how do you plan to celebrate? Seeing Li Che's smile, Zhang Yi immediately understood his naughty thoughts, her pretty face blushingly red. Li Che then took out the 5 taels of monthly salary he collected today and told Zhang Yi about his plans to move into the wood carving shop. Zhang Yi was stunned by the news of the move, though she found it odd. She did not ask further. Wherever her husband went, her and her daughter naturally followed. Moreover, Zhang Ye also understood that the wood carving shop was definitely much safer than here. After dinner, Zhang Ye coaxed Xixi to sleep early, and the couple then carefully engaged in a session of passionate activities. In bed, Zhang Ye's black hair was scattered, and she fell into a deep sleep. Li Che, however, was clear-headed and refreshed. Sitting in front of the lit oil lamp, he took out Tang's mechanism essentials, which he had borrowed from old Chen. The Dao fruit immortal artisan trembled once again. With a gleam in his eyes, Li Che began to flip through, carefully observing. The book recorded various sophisticated mechanisms, and many were of great lethal power. As Li Che read, driven by the understanding provided by the Dao fruit, he instantly became immersed, utterly captivated by the ingenious designs and creative innovations. However, the book only listed 12 mechanisms, of which 9 required inner strength and divinity to be crafted. At present, Li Che did not consider them. He chose the remaining 3 that could be crafted without the need for inner strength and divinity, named Sleeve Crossbow, Guanyin Blood Lotus, and Thousand Thread Spider. Taking out the scrap wood he brought back from the shop, Li Che planned to make the sleeve crossbow. Mainly because it was somewhat similar to his original crossbow design, so he could go straight into making it. The carving knife sliced through the wood, the rasping sound of tearing wood fibers continued all night. When the first streak of dawn broke through the gloom and covered the snow-laden earth, Li Che had finally completed the delicate and exquisite sleeve crossbow. Dao fruit, immortal artisan, LV2, 19%. The moment the creation was complete, Li Che's mind suddenly flooded with a mass of details on using the sleeve crossbow, and at the same time, a prompt popped up before his eyes. Li Che's eyes suddenly brightened, and his spirits doubled, not expecting that making the sleeve crossbow would grant 10% maturation to the Dao fruit. Li Che referred to the percentage in the suffix as the Dao fruit maturity, for once it was full, the Dao fruit would elevate, bearing a clever analogy with its ripening. Is it based on the difficulty of the mechanism? Li Che couldn't help but wonder. His increasing Dao fruit had been slow, making Li Che somewhat anxious. But now it seemed he had found another way to enhance the Dao fruit. However, the number of mechanisms was slightly disappointing, causing Li Che to quickly calm down, feeling a bit regretful. But, the mechanism handbook thoroughly records 12 mechanisms, if I can produce them all, it should be enough to elevate the immortal artisan to LV3. Li Che's eyes sparkled, his heart pounding with excitement. There was still a chance. Because he had made the sleeve crossbow, Li Che simultaneously mastered the technique of using it, so he was quite eager to try it. If he could master inner strength and vitality, activating the sleeve crossbow would be even more powerful. However, after a glance at his sleeping wife and daughter, he resisted the urge. He stood up and stretched, his bones crackling. Perhaps because of the Dao fruit, staying up all night left him feeling refreshed and clear-headed. With the sleeve crossbow hidden in his sleeve, using wood to construct the body of the crossbow and the crossbow arrows made of wood, although the durability wasn't great, the sharpened wooden spike arrows were also not weak in power, and being lightweight, he had the advantage of being able to make them anytime. After heading to the kitchen, Li Che prepared breakfast. Yet his gaze involuntarily landed on the spirit infant wood carving he had placed in the firewood shed. Frowning, he pondered for a moment and then shook his head vigorously. No, I can't leave Xixi and her mother in the mud house. It's not safe anymore. Chapter 10, Repeating Crossbow with 9 Arrows, Mechanism to Kill. Li Che clutched the spirit infant statue, his eyes flickering uncertainly. Since the other party had targeted them and had taken out the sinister spirit infant wood carving as a mark, Li Che naturally did not dare to take a risk. If he went out to work and the other party forced their way into the house, he would regret it terribly. The safest place, naturally, is the wood carving shop. I am now a wood carving master, with my own workshop, where Xixi and Xiaoya can stay. Stable and safe. Having made a decision to secure a safe option, Li Che woke his wife, Zhang Ye. Husband, you were too exhausting last night, you must have been holding back for a long time. Zhang Ye's face blushed slightly, her gaze towards Li Che seemingly able to squeeze out water. Li Che smiled, gently stroking his wife's disheveled hair. Wife, tidy up a bit, take Xixi with us, and go to the wood carving shop. Join me at work these next 2 days. Li Che said. Zhang Ye was momentarily startled. Going to the wood carving shop to work together? Husband, today is your first day at work as a wood carver. Should Xixi and I really accompany you? Won't that displease the shopkeeper? Li Che shook his head. No, the workshop is a private space of the wood carving master, and it's fine for family members to stay there. Besides, I will explain to the shopkeeper. Upon hearing this, Zhang Ye stopped objecting and began to pack, picking up Xixi, who was wide awake on the bed, waving her arms and legs, playing by herself. After bundling up Xixi securely, the family braved the wind and snow and set off for Su's wood carving shop. Li Che protected his wife and daughter, tightening his wife's cotton clothes against the howling wind and covering Xixi to shield her from the cold. At the same time, Li Che was also scanning his surroundings, extremely vigilant. Zhang Ye, seeing her husband like this, suddenly felt a chill and knew that something must have happened. Although Li Che had not spoken of it, she decided not to ask and instead worried silently. The couple, with their child, walked through the wind and snow, stepping onto the snow-covered bluestone street. The Holy Spirit teaches, cleanses from the worldly dust, method of reincarnation without worries. Only the highly wise are naturally accomplished. The sound of tinkling and drumming echoed as the followers of the spiritual infant sect approached in a mesmerizing formation from a distance. The three-headed six-armed Lingying statue carried on the palanquin, amidst a swirl of incense and smoke, grew more sinister. Li Che even faintly felt the spirit infant master wood carving's gaze intentionally looking towards his family, blurring his vision, constantly watching them, making him feel like a thorn was in his back. Husband! Zhang Ye looked at the procession of the spirit infant master, her expression clearly panicking. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Don't look, keep walking straight. Li Che patted his wife, wrapping his arm around her slender shoulders, and headed straight for the wood carving shop. However, Li Che inexplicably felt the chill wind rustle behind him, as if a figure was constantly following behind his family. The crisis was like dense ink soaking into a pond, beginning to spread gradually until the entire pond turned black. Fortunately, they soon arrived at Su's wood carving shop. The moment he stepped into the wood carving shop, Li Che finally felt a relief wash over him. He looked back in the distance, his eyes narrowing, and sure enough, saw a shadow flash past a corner. Lei Chunlin. Li Che's chest heaved violently, and he could not help but be overwhelmed with the urge to kill. Che! Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. Chen Dabao, holding a gourd and drinking, saw Li Che, along with Zhang Ye and Xixi by his side. This scene made him pause for a moment, but old Chen, wise beyond his years, recalled what Li Che had previously mentioned about the spirit infant master targeting his daughter, and quickly understood the situation. Come inside first. Old Chen's expression was solemn as he ushered Li Che and his wife and daughter into the shop. Li Che settled Zhang Ye in his workshop before going to find Old Chen. Old Chen, drinking from his gourd, glanced at Li Che, being targeted. Li Che nodded and pulled out the spirit infant wood carving that had appeared at his doorstep the previous night. At the sight of the spirit infant wood carving, Old Chen's expression became stern, and he stopped drinking. You did the right thing by bringing your wife and daughter here to the wood carving shop. Your house is no longer safe. Spirit infant master, presenting this wood carving represents the spirit infant sex assessment of your daughter, as a spirit infant. Old Chen took the wood carving, his expression extremely grave. Li Che's face also changed upon hearing this. They must have been watching your family all along. Did this three-headed six-armed spirit infant statue only appear last night? It seems they must have known that you became a woodcarver of Suji and would surely move to Su's courtyard, so. Li Che's expression turned grim. They wanted to strike first. Right, you were prudent enough to bring your wife and daughter over. Old Chen clenched his fist, and the spirit infant wood carving instantly cracked and shattered into pieces on the ground. You said someone has been following you? Was it that midwife who has harmed many children? It might be, I didn't get a clear look, can't be sure. Considering that you and I are about to become friendly neighbors. I'll take you on a trip, see if it's that brainwashed midwife. Old Chen took a swig of strong liquor, squinted his eyes slightly, and said. Upon hearing this, Li Che couldn't help but feel joyful. He knew that Old Chen's change of attitude was all because of the talent he demonstrated in wood carving, able to imbue carvings with profound meanings. Such a talent seemed more important than he had imagined. Li Che settled his wife and daughter inside the workshop, instructing Zhang Ye not to wander off, while Old Chen asked a master to keep an eye on things before he and Li Che left the shop together. Both of them wore hats to block the wind and snow. After leaving the shop, Old Chen threw a cloak to Li Che, wrapped himself in one as well, and fastened his gourd of liquor to his waist. They reached the corner of the alley. But all they saw at the corner of the alley, placed on the snow, was a three-headed six-armed spirit infant statue. Wow, quite bold, daring to mark in front of Suji's shop, really think Suji is made of mud. Old Chen narrowed his eyes and stomped down, his surging inner strength instantly blasted the spirit infant wood carving into pieces. Clatter. At the same time, a dark shadow in the distance seemed startled and swiftly fled, stepping on the snow. Found it, Old Chen narrowed his eyes and glanced at Li Che. You follow at your own pace, watch your safety. After speaking, Old Chen's exposed skin turned fiery red as if burnt, his body relaxed and his sinews tightened, making a sound like a taut bowstring. The snow under his feet instantly melted into water, a scorching heat wave rushing towards him, and with one step, he launched forward like a red-hot branding iron thrown at high speed, shattering the falling snow and chasing after the fleeing black shadow. Watching Old Chen shoot away in an instant, Li Che was slightly shocked in his heart. Skin refinement, sinew transforming, bone tempering, blood exchange. Old Chen had reached an unknown realm, and his inner strength was also extremely formidable. Exhaling a breath of hot air from the snow, Li Che pressed down on the sleeve crossbow hidden in his sleeve, his expression cold as water. It's not the theft itself one fears, but the thief's constant attention. Thinking about his beloved XIXI being targeted by these villains, a strong surge of violence welled up in Li Che's heart. You want to mess with my daughter, I will kill you. Li Che stepped on the stone path and quickly caught up. From afar, he saw Old Chen leaning against the wall at the corner of the alley, enjoying fine wine from a gourd. Behind him in the alley, a black shadow curled up on the ground, blood staining the snow red. It's not the midwife, just a martial practitioner with great success in skin refinement who joined the spirit infant sect and became a follower, Old Chen said indifferently as he saw Li Che approaching. Li Che's heart sank slightly, somewhat disappointed. It's not Lei Chunlin, it's truly a pity. The man's skin was dark, and he exuded a sense of resilience from being exposed to the elements, but he was utterly listless now, bleeding from his mouth and nose, lying on the ground, panting heavily, coughing up blood. He clearly couldn't last even a few moves against Old Chen and had suffered a severe beating. Old Chen, after beating the man, drank his wine, enjoying the leisure of the aftermath like smoking a cigarette. Li Che stared at the man who had buried his head in the snow, his fists clenched, his eyes icy cold. Where is Lei Chunlin? Li Che asked, his voice slightly hoarse. I don't know. The man buried his head and grunted a reply. Right after he spoke, Li Che fiercely kicked his head, slamming the man's head hard against the cobblestone ground covered in snow, making a dull sound. Li Che continuously kicked him several times, the man gritting his teeth, merely grunting without screaming or making any noise. Old Chen watched indifferently, his expression a mix of a smirk and a smile. A while later, the two walked in silence on the long street, Old Chen with his hands behind his back, completely at ease. Meanwhile, Li Che looked toward Chen Dabao. Old Chen, you head back to the shop. I'm going to buy some pig's head meat and 2 pounds of yellow wine to thank you. Old Chen grinned upon hearing this. You're too polite, go ahead. I want it from that marinade shop in the western part of the city. Li Che smiled, agreed, and then darted into the snow. Old Chen watched Li Che's disappearing figure, smacked his lips, picked up the gourd, removed the stopper, and took a hearty swig. This kid, really is a good father. However, having never practiced martial arts, killing a skin refinement martial artist, won't be easy. In the alley, the snow fluttered sporadically, piercingly cold. A strong scent of blood permeated the air as the dark-skinned man who had suffered a severe beating from Old Chen staggered up from the ground, leaning on the wall. Old Chen's strength was too formidable, freshly initiated in skin refinement, the man had absolutely no power to resist. As for the kicks from Li Che, to a skin refinement martial artist, they were barely painful, merely a touch humiliating. The spirit infant eyed by the Dharma master, none can escape, even Suji can't keep it safe. The man panted heavily. Suddenly, his waist abruptly stiffened, the light at the end of the alley blocked by a figure. He struggled to raise his head, only to see a tall figure wearing a conical hat blocking the alleyway. And that figure in the conical hat raised an arm. Whoosh! With a sound tearing through the air, cutting through the swirling snow. Thud! It was like something exploded. The dark-skinned man felt a sharp pain originating from his eye as a wooden crossbow arrow, carrying tremendous force, pierced through his eyeball, blurring his vision with blood in an instant. He screamed in agony, pain searing through his nerves. Like a provoked tiger, he roared angrily, attempting to pounce toward the person in the alley who had shot the hidden arrow to tear them apart. Li Che, wearing the conical hat, watched the charging dark-skinned man, utterly indifferent, another crossbow arrow whistling through the air. One arrow after another, each finding its mark. Skin refinement indeed means thick skin and flesh, but can you also refine your eyeballs? Having emptied the first set of 9 arrows from his sleeve crossbow. It wasn't until the dark-skinned man knelt on the ground, his head turned into a pincushion, that he utterly stopped moving, dead. Only then did Li Che shake his sleeve, face expressionless, carefully hid the sleeve crossbow, adjusted his conical hat, and walked toward the marinade shop in the western part of the city. Chapter 11, Mysterious Temple. He sliced 1 gin of braised beef and poured some old yellow wine. Li Che's mood was somewhat somber. This was his first time killing someone, but his emotional response wasn't particularly strong. Born in a dwindling imperial court in an era rife with bizarreness, life was as cheap as dirt. Although the burly man wasn't Lei Chunlin, the midwife, since he harbored ill intentions towards Xixi, Li Che naturally showed no mercy. He didn't want to kill someone in front of Grandpa Chen, so he intentionally found an excuse to circle back. After all, killing someone in front of Grandpa Chen would have given away too much. Haven't Grandpa Chen also refrained from killing? Most importantly, the words of the burly man just before his death stuck in Li Che's throat. Su's wood carving shop, could it really not suppress the spirit infant sect? Li Che exhaled deeply and walked on foot along the long street, pausing his steps as he passed by the government office's notice board and looked over. He discovered that the wanted poster for Lei Chunlin which hung on the notice board had been torn off at some unknown time and replaced with a poster for a flower thief. Lei Chunlin's wanted poster, has it been cancelled already? Is Lei Chunlin already dead, or has someone from the spirit infant sect intervened to suppress the wanted notice? Li Che's brows furrowed, his expression growing even darker. Killing a man from the spirit infant sect had not lessened his worries by much. We can't relax until we move into the shop's courtyard. Braving the wind and snow, he returned to the wood carving shop, removed his hat and cloak as warmth engulfed him, along with the continuous sound of Xixi's cooing. Suddenly feeling tender, Li Che entered the workshop only to see Grandpa Chen holding Xixi, his face beaming with a radiant smile as he playfully swayed from side to side. Choo choo choo, give Grandpa Chen a smile, Xixi, Grandpa Chen chuckled warmly. Xixi cooed and grabbed onto Grandpa Chen's beard with her chubby little hands, yanking with force which made Grandpa Chen's laughter grow louder. Some of the senior craftsmen also stopped their work to gather around, watching with smiles all over their faces. The shop rarely had a little child around, which made the craftsmen blissfully happy. Ah Che, you're back? Go to the backyard, the second shopkeeper is waiting for you. Xixi is here, I'll play with her, Grandpa Chen, he assured. No worries, the little girl and I are close. If anyone dares to lay a finger on her, I'll slap them to death. Upon seeing Li Che, Grandpa Chen quickly called out. Li Che nodded, put down the beef and old yellow wine, and spoke a few comforting words to his waiting wife, Zhang Ye, before heading to the backyard. The snowfall grew heavier, large flakes swirling midair. On the training ground, several figures were already present. The woodcarvers Zhao Xian and Wang Zhenpin, who were recruited along with Li Che, were already practicing the skin refinement technique under the orders of second shopkeeper Su Baihu. Li Che hurried his steps, seeing the 2 shopkeepers, he greeted them with a clasped fist bow. Second shopkeeper, third shopkeeper, Li Che has arrived late. Third shopkeeper Su Yu sat under the eaves of a hut by the training ground, using tongs to place winter plums into boiling water and sprinkling in some roasted tea leaves. Upon seeing Li Che, Su Yu nodded. Grandpa Chen told us, there's a reason for everything, we understand. Your daughter was targeted by the spirit infant sect. Su Yu said gently, showing no blame for Li Che's late arrival. The spirit infant sect, always involved in inhuman deeds. What good things can come from that mysterious temple? And yet so many people worship the spirit infant master, offering up divinity, even many powerful families in the city secretly support. These fools, they will eventually bring about a disaster. Su Baihu, a towering figure, snorted coldly at this, his vigorous vitality blasting the falling snow into powder. Come and learn skin refinement. Being powerful is the real asset, otherwise, in these times, you won't even have the power to protect your wife and daughter. Su Baihu looked towards Li Che, his voice booming. Go ahead, I have already arranged for your move. Tomorrow, you and old Chen go check the house. Su Yu continued boiling tea as he spoke. Even if it's in the outer city, the spirit infant sect wouldn't dare make trouble in Su's shop, it's safe. When your daughter grows up, she can come to Su's courtyard in the inner city and train with the Su descendants to build a solid foundation. Upon hearing this, Li Che paused. Training in the inner city with Su's descendants, was that a good or bad thing? Without dwelling on it, Li Che thanked them with a bow and then proceeded to the courtyard. Su Baihu stretched out his hand and patted Li Che's body, his eyebrows relaxing. His foundation is decent, though he's a bit older, it's not impossible to train him. With more hard work, there's still hope to step into bone tempering. Skin refinement is actually the initial method of stimulating the blood and energy. Energy is generated from within the body, from the inside out, and from the outside in, complementing and stimulating each other, using blood to grind the skin, using energy to refine the muscles. Following that, Su Baihu began to teach Li Che the cultivation method for skin refinement. Li Che listened extremely attentively, daring not to slacken in the slightest. Today, he had killed a man, but that was through the use of mechanisms and clever tricks. If only he could be as formidable in personal martial force as old Chen. Well, if mechanisms can kill, it's still more comfortable to kill with mechanisms. Heavy snow fluttered about, the chill biting. Yet, Li Che was drenched in a heavy sweat, steaming in the cold air, large beads of sweat constantly rolling off his forehead. After a day of rigorous training, Li Che felt his skin burning hot. Although he had not yet mastered skin refinement, he had grasped the method of cultivation. I have already taught you the skin refinement technique. From now on, diligently cultivate and avoid negligence. The martial path demands perseverance in practice regardless of seasons to achieve growth and gains. Once you have completed skin refinement, I will teach you the tendon activation technique. However, to complete skin refinement will take at least 2 years. Strive hard. From now on, practice skin refinement in the morning at the training ground and carve in the workshop in the afternoon. Every 6 months, I will evaluate your progress in skin refinement, Su Baihu said gravely. His tiger-like eyes bearing an immense pressure, he surveyed the 3 men. Instantly, Li Che and the other 2 clasped their fists in response. Upon returning from the training ground, the sky had already darkened. Li Che's skin was painfully hot, but his mood was incredibly exhilarated. At last, he had officially begun his martial training. Old Chen, cradling XIXI, boasted as he strolled through the workshops of various masters, seemingly familiarizing XIXI with everyone. Li Che could feel old Chen's genuine affection for XIXI. He heard old Chen was a loner with neither wife nor children, his entire life devoted to Su's wood carving shop. Unlike other master woodcarvers who had families full of wives and children, a single woodcarver could support a whole family indeed. Although they were not grand masters, their wood carvings were highly marketable, making money wasn't hard. Like old Chen, who recently carved 9 sons embracing the lotus and directly earned 150 taels. Finished training? Started on skin refinement, right? Old Chen, holding XIXI with a beaming smile, approached Li Che. Seeing Li Che, XIXI stretched out her arms wanting to be hugged. Oh you ungrateful little one, your grandpa Chen held you all day without you wanting to leave. Old Chen, seeing how easily XIXI abandoned him, playfully pouted his lips. Li Che smiled and took XIXI from him. The full moon-faced XIXI was increasingly chubby and fair, beautiful with large, bright eyes, and long eyelashes which fluttered like a sprite's. Old Chen, there's something I'd like to ask of you. Old Chen, while playing with XIXI, waved his hand. I know what you're about to say, you want me to watch over XIXI tonight, don't you? Until you move to the shop's courtyard, you really can't be at ease, old Chen laughed. Li Che wasn't embarrassed, in these chaotic times, fearing death wasn't something to be embarrassed about. Moreover, he indeed had such concerns. Rest assured, XIXI and I get along very well. Indeed, I need to keep watch, and it's just right that tomorrow I will take her to see the courtyard with me. Old Chen took XIXI back from Li Che's arms. All right, you've held her long enough, come here, let Grandpa Chen hold you. Li Che was left laughing wryly. How long did he even hold her? He had just passed her from his hands a moment ago. Back inside the workshop, seeing his wife Zhang Ye had cleaned everything spotlessly, his face instantly beamed with a smile. Wife and children warm by the hearth. This was what he sought, only hoping that his wife and daughter were safe and sound. Only wishing to watch his daughter grow up slowly. Thus, spirit infant sect, do not force him. If pushed to the brink. Today he killed one man, one day. He might dare to slaughter the entire spirit infant sect. Chapter 12. After finishing work, Old Chen carried Xixi and, braving the wind and snow, set off on the journey home with Li Che and Zhang Ye. To prevent Xixi from being afflicted by the harsh weather, Old Chen even directly used his inner strength to dispel the cold, ensuring that not a single snowflake landed on the little girl. Back in their humble earthen house, Zhang Ye and Li Che became busy with preparations, naturally wanting to show good hospitality since Old Chen was there to protect them. They cooked fine wine and dishes and enjoyed a hearty dinner together. Xiao Ye's cooking is not bad at all. In the future, if Old Chen comes over for meals, I'm certainly in for a treat, Old Chen said. Old Chen ate his food and drank his wine, his eyes squinting happily. Meanwhile, Xixi sat in the wooden baby chair Li Che had made for her, waving her arms, seeming to want a taste of Old Chen's gourd wine as well. Li Che joined Old Chen for a few drinks but did not drink much more after that. After all, he had to stay alert tonight due to worries about the followers of the spirit infant sect getting desperate. After dinner, Old Chen played with Xixi while Li Che sat under the oil lamp in the chair, pulling out the wood he had brought from the wood carving shop to practice carving and try making mechanisms. Maybe because they had grown closer, during a break in the drinking, Old Chen told Li Che that he wouldn't charge him for borrowing Tang's mechanism essentials. Li Che, now a formal wood carver, although not short of 50 coins, appreciated Old Chen's gesture and thanked him with a toast. Even after finishing the sleeve crossbow, Li Che didn't stop. He planned to make 2 more sets, one to hide in his other sleeve and another for his wife, Zhang Ye, just in case. Sure enough, after one production of sleeve crossbow, the maturity of his dao fruit could no longer increase. If he wanted to further mature the dao fruit, he would have to make other mechanisms. The wind and snow were intense, howling wildly outside the house. The oil lamp's wick flickered inside, casting wavering shadows. In the middle of the night, while watching over Xixi, who was sleeping, Old Chen suddenly narrowed his eyes and silently left the house, leaping onto the roof in one move. His strong vital energy roared like an angry dragon amidst the wind and snow. Several approaching silhouettes, sensing Old Chen's presence, did not hesitate and turned to flee. Old Chen's face darkened. The followers of the spirit infant sect were indeed crazy, daring to commit acts of violence in the dead of night. One sinew transforming, foreskin refinements, this lineup. If Old Chen weren't here tonight, young Ha might not be able to protect Xixi. Old Chen pulled out the stopper of his gourd and took a swig of wine. His eyes blazed with intense fierceness. Spirit infant sect. They had indeed turned Feilei City into a mess. Returning inside, Old Chen nodded at Li Che and then went back to the sleeping Xixi's side. Li Che's hand clutched the carving knife, his veins bulging like dragons, and after a long time, he slowly exhaled and settled down to continue carving. This kindness from Old Chen today was something Li Che would remember. The next day, the weather cleared up, no longer windy or snowy. Zhang Ye got up early to start packing, preparing for moving. Although her husband hadn't said much, she, being as observant as she was, realized the danger threatening their small home when they had to invite Master Chen to stay over. Therefore, she felt no sadness about moving, only the desire to quickly move into the courtyard of Su's wood carving shop. There weren't many things in the earthen house. Some daily necessities were piled up, loaded onto a donkey cart, and pulled towards Su's wood carving shop. The neighbors looked on at this scene, poking their heads out one by one, watching with surprise and envy. Moving out, hey! This family is about to rise high and leave our little corner, one of them said. I heard that Che has become a formal wood carving master from working as a mover at Suji's wood carving shop. He's going to make a lot of money now. Another added. You can tell Che was bound to succeed. Now he's become a wood carver, and I heard that a single carving from a wood carver can sell for 10 pieces of silver. It's different now, they're not from our world anymore. The neighbors murmured enviously, showing varying reactions as they watched the donkey cart crush the pristine snow underfoot, disappearing around the corner of the alley. Upon arriving at the wood carving shop, they went straight inside. Li Che did not see the third shopkeeper, but he did meet an old man dressed in fine clothes, looking like a steward, holding a set of keys. "Master Li, the shopkeeper asked me to wait for you and accompany you to choose a housing unit," the steward said with a smile, then he turned to look at Chen Dabao holding XIXI. "Oh, Master Chen is here too." Old Chen smiled, "Old son, just take HA directly to the 2-room housing unit across from my place. We'll be neighbors." The steward, known as Old Son, smiled broadly, "That sounds great, follow me this way." The group entered the large courtyard of the shop and walked through the narrow lanes between high walls, quickly arriving at the residential area, seeing several houses aligned along both sides of the alley. Su's wood carving shop was vast, occupying a wide area. After all, the Su family was wealthy and powerful. They also practiced martial arts and mastered inner strength. Having developed in Feilei City for over 200 years, they possessed deep foundations. They were bigger landowners than even the large landowners, naturally having amassed quite a bit of land. The steward, Old Son, used a key to unlock the door and pushed it open, shaking off the snow piled on the roof, revealing a spacious courtyard covered in thick snow. "Master Li, please take a look. If you are not satisfied, we can look at other courtyards." The steward, Old Son, looked at Li Che with a demeanor that was both gentle and respectful. Being able to become a formal wood carving master from a laborer required an exceptionally high wood carving talent. Becoming the steward of Su's wood carving shop meant he had the necessary discernment, he would not commit the folly of offending others lightly. Li Che led Zhangya into the courtyard and inspected it carefully. His long tense emotions finally relaxed. A smile formed on his lips, "Good, very good." Zhangya, too, looked at the bright and luxurious courtyard in a daze and disbelief. Compared to the small clay house they had lived in before, this was so much better. "Let's have uncle and his family over for a housewarming feast in a couple of days. We can consider ourselves settled in then." After viewing the house, Zhangya nestled in Li Che's arms, her eyes shimmering slightly. Her husband had promised her a good life, and now, it had finally come true. Life was slowly getting better. "You two clean up the courtyard a bit, and then move in properly. Old man XIXI has taken the little ones home to play. Once you're done, come over for dinner. I'll arrange a table at the Spring Breeze building just across your courtyard." Chen Dabao, holding XIXI, shouted a few times and then returned to his own courtyard. Being so close, they could even hear the giggling laughter of XIXI and Chen Dabao playing. Li Che smiled knowingly, "I didn't expect old Chen and XIXI to get along so well. Master Chen is really nice. With him taking care of XIXI, we can also rest easy while we clean up." Zhangya said with a pursed lip smile. The couple exchanged a glance, then began to busily tidy up the courtyard. Time does not stand still, the seasons flow like a river. Moments scatter like wood shavings under the carving knife, unnoticed as they fill the ground. XIXI turned 1 year old. Inside the courtyard, the chill of autumn had just passed, and the stark winter snow had already begun to drift down, piling up in the courtyard like soft white cotton. Li Che and Old Chen sat by the stove, atop which warm aged yellow wine was being heated. The table was laid with sliced braised beef and pig's ears mixed with coriander and minced garlic, exuding a delicious aroma. In the courtyard, 1 year old XIXI was running around joyfully, chasing after the falling snow, using the wooden walker that Li Che had made for her. Old Chen looked at XIXI with adoration, not moving his eyes away. "Oh, my little stinky XI, it's snowing outside. It's cold, come back inside to play." "Uncle Chen, it's fine. Let her run around a bit. She'll get tired and it will be easier to put her to sleep at night. Otherwise, she's too energetic and stays awake with her eyes wide as copper bells," Zhangya said with a laugh, bringing out a plate of steaming fried edamame from the kitchen. "Ha, XIXI is 1 year old now. Were you really not thinking of hosting a feast? Old man, I must let XIXI receive presents in style. I've called several other old fellows around, you've got to host a few tables." Old Chen grabbed some edamame, eating and chuckling. Li Che originally did not want to host a first birthday party. Even though they had moved to the large courtyard of the shop nearly a year ago and the spirit infant sect had been quiet, he remained vigilant deep inside. And the closer it got to XIXI's first birthday, the more vigilant Li Che became. After all, Lei Chunlin had specifically targeted 1-year-old infants in the past. However, after discussing it with his wife, they decided to have the first birthday party after all, mainly because the courtyard was spacious enough and hosting it at home would naturally be safe. After heating the old yellow wine, he poured a cup for old Chen. Li Che also poured himself a cup and took a sip. The fragrance of the wine spread warmth, dispelling the winter chill. Suddenly, Li Che felt a slight vibration in his heart. Images immediately appeared before his eyes. On the vast land, a towering treasure tree, lush with branches and leaves, slowly bore a colorful fruit that shimmered and sparkled, reflecting the many scenes of Xixi's growth over the past year. Li Che's eyes lit up instantly. A long-missed anticipation finally blossomed at this moment. Xixi is one, the second Dao fruit has arrived. Your daughter is 1 year old, safe and sound. You receive a Dao fruit, Dragon Elephant Vajra. Chapter 13, Little Stinky Xi, unparalleled in cross-training. Li Che quietly pinched the wine cup, savoring the warm, aged yellow wine. The fragrant and astringent taste permeated his mouth, but his mind had already drifted to the towering Dao tree on the vast land above. His daughter turned 1, and the Dao tree bore fruit. Raw Dao fruit Dragon Elephant Vajra. This was Li Che's second Dao fruit. The first was Immortal Artisan, which enhanced his wood carving talent and allowed him to have the means to make a living in this world. And he became a wood carver at Su's wood carving shop, settling in Su's courtyard, ensuring his daughter Li Nuangzi's safe growth until she was 1 year old. Li Che had already understood the importance of the Dao fruit. Therefore, he was very much looking forward to the second Dao fruit, and now it had finally ripened. Dragon Elephant Vajra, Dao fruit flesh Dragon Elephant, Vajra indestructible, horizontal refinement unparalleled. Before him, the prompts regarding the Dao fruit Dragon Elephant Vajra suddenly surged forth like a tide. In an instant, Li Che felt his blood boiling and surging within him, and his flesh seemed to have undergone an earth-shattering transformation. If he was willing, actively stimulating the Dao fruit could even cause a mutation in his flesh. However, with old Chen by his side, Li Che did not dwell on this and refrained from exploring the special abilities of the Dragon Elephant Vajra. Flesh Dragon Elephant, Vajra indestructible, horizontal refinement unparalleled. Li Che's heart surged with excitement, and he was in high spirits as he drained the cup of yellow wine. This was a Dao fruit that could enhance his martial path. It was also the Dao fruit that Li Che urgently needed now. This Dao fruit not only confirmed the truth of the event that his daughter produced a Dao fruit at 1 year old, but it also made Li Che understand that he had to try even harder to protect his daughter's safe growth. And even, watching his daughter, immortal. Li Che's heart skipped a beat. If his daughter was immortal, producing 1 Dao fruit a year, wouldn't he be able to amass a multitude of Dao fruits and grow to unimaginable heights in the future? Yo, when did you start drinking so heartily? Old Chen looked oddly at Li Che, who had just heartily drained his cup with turbulent emotions. Li Che smiled and turned his warm gaze to Xixi, who was riding in her walker. Before I knew it, the little one is already a year old. Hearing this, old Chen's lips spread into a smile, and his doting eyes fell back onto Xixi. Yet, she was so tiny at the start, and now she's grown a bit. This old fella has no heirs, no descendants. This little stinky Xi, she's quite taken with this old fella. Old Chen too drained his cup of aged yellow wine, feeling invigorated and dispelling any gloom. From now on, Xixi would be his own granddaughter. Seeming to understand the implication in old Chen's words, Li Che poured him another cup of wine and the two clinked cups and drank up. The training field. Snow fluttered down. Several figures were energetically cultivating on the training field, their blood and energy boiling and scattering the falling snow. Li Che changed into a training outfit and came to the training field. In the distance, 2 figures spotted Li Che and immediately stopped their actions, exhaling steam. Zhao Xian, with the tall figure and her black hair tied up neatly, said with a smile, "Master Chen, you're here. Isn't it Xixi's first birthday celebration today?" Another practitioner, Wang Zhenpin, also laughed. "Zhao Xian and I were just planning to attend the banquet after finishing our training." "Ha ha ha, everyone should go, it's Xixi's first birthday. As uncles and aunts, you can't skimp on the presents," Li Che laughed. The banquet is arranged at Spring Breeze Building in the outer city. Spring Breeze Building has specially sent chefs and servers. Everything is taken care of. I don't have anything to do, Xixi has been taken away by old Chen, so, With nothing else to do, I came to train. Upon hearing this, Wang Zhengping pursed his lips. A banquet at Spring Breeze Building. Looks like we're in for a treat tonight. After a casual chat, the three continued their martial arts training. Second shopkeeper Su Baihu once said that if the three of them wanted to achieve skin refinement completion, they would need to diligently train hard for 2 years to attain it. If they were lazy, it might take even longer. Therefore, none of them dared slack off one bit. Li Che was significantly older than Zhao Xian and Wang Zhenpin. He was already 20 years old, which made him 3 or 4 years older than the other two. If he didn't work hard, as he aged and his vital energy declined, it might become even harder to make progress in the martial path. So Su Baihu had said that the most important part of body refinement technique was diligence, racing against time. For nearly a year now, Li Che practiced his martial arts in the morning, carved wood in the afternoon, and attempted to make mechanisms at night. He was busy and fulfilled. He didn't neglect his skin refinement body refinement either, and had now reached minor accomplishment in skin refinement. In terms of progress, he was even slightly ahead of Zhao Xian and Wang Zhenpin. Even though Su Baihu said that body refinement didn't care much about talent, there still was a slight difference in the end. Li Che came to the training ground now, of course, to test the Dragon Elephant Vajra Dao fruit. Grasping the stone lock, the vital energy in his body surged, boiling blood water pounded against his flesh and struck the skin, causing it to turn crimson in an instant. The temperature rose, and heat waves tumbled. At the same time, the Dragon Elephant Vajra Dao fruit, as he stimulated his blood energy, seemed to be fully activated and began to throb. In front of his eyes, a prompt suddenly appeared. Dao fruit, Dragon Elephant Vajra, LV1, 1%. Joy emerged in his pupils, an invisible force spread through his body, striking his skin and feeling as though it had encountered thousands of hits in an instant, greatly accelerating the progress of skin refinement. Li Che, who had achieved minor accomplishment in skin refinement, felt a sudden increase in his strength. His skin became extremely tough, and even a faint glow shone brightly, as if borrowing the activating power of the Dao fruit to leap from minor accomplishment in skin refinement, directly into perfection. Unlike the immortal artisan Dao fruit, the maturity of the Dragon Elephant Golden Core Dao fruit only required him to diligently train to increase. In short, it could be achieved through hard work. Li Che was overjoyed, and with a thought, the subtle glow on his body immediately retracted, and his strong aura completely gathered. It was as if he had completely vanished from existence. Controlled freely, a perfect Dao fruit for deception. The vital energy was retracted without revealing a trace. With this, I needn't worry about being suspected because of too rapid an increase in cultivation. My physique. Su Baihu has tested it. If it improves too quickly, it will surely raise doubts, and might even bring a fatal disaster upon myself. In such chaotic times, it's impossible for Su's courtyard to have remained secure in Feilei City for 200 years without ruthless methods. Therefore, one must not be without defense against others. Li Che pondered for a moment, then gently exhaled. He practiced the skin refinement cultivation method step by step in the training ground, training for half a day. Dao fruit, Dragon Elephant Vajra, LV1, 2%. The maturity of the Dao fruit had actually increased by 1%. This brought a thicker smile to Li Che's face. Taking advantage of the fact that no one around noticed him, he once again opened the floodgates, releasing the vital blood power contained within the Dao fruit. In an instant, his vital energy rose again, reaching skin refinement perfection. His skin glowed with a faint golden light, his temples bulged, with powerful strength coursing between his fists and palms. After savoring the power boost from the 1% maturity increase, Li Che was immediately thrilled. This meant that he, now qualified to challenge the muscle channeling stage. To start practicing the internal strength technique. Besides, the Dragon Elephant Vajra Dao fruit has a special ability to summon the power of the Dragon Elephant. Unfortunately, the training ground was crowded at the moment, so it was not convenient for Li Che to activate it. But one can imagine that the manipulation of the power of the Dragon Elephant would surely bring a greater boost. He gathered the vital energy back inside the Dao fruit. Li Che looked up, with snowflakes gently falling on his cheeks. The corners of his lips couldn't help but lift. In terms of personal martial strength, he finally had a hopeful future. He looked forward to having a chance to kill the Spirit Infant Master. Chapter 14, The First Birthday Banquet, The Spirit Baby's Angry Glare. Master Li, congratulations! Happy first birthday to XIXI! Snowflakes, as white as cotton, swirled in the air, standing out against the black roof tiles. The courtyard gate stood wide open, and the sound of footsteps crunching on the snow rose and fell, with congratulatory voices following in an endless stream. Figure after figure walked in from outside the courtyard, each presenting gifts for the one-year-old celebration. All were familiar faces from the wood-carving shop. Li Che and Zhang Yi, dressed in splendid attire, stood at the entrance to welcome these guests. In the courtyard, attendants from Spring Breeze building had already set up tents, arranged tables and chairs, and the chef on one side had set up his stove and lit the fire. The appetizing starters had already been delivered to each table early on. In total, there were 9 tables set, which wasn't a small number. After all, quite a few of the master craftsmen had brought their families, aiming for a joyous and lively celebration. Chen Dabao, holding XIXI, who was dressed in a red jacket and skirt and looked incredibly adorable and delicate, was showing her off to several old fellows, his face piled high with smiles. The affection he felt was so thick that it seemed to overflow. The great-uncle's family had also arrived. The old scholar was clutching a tobacco pipe that wasn't lit and was followed by a young couple carrying a child still in swaddling clothes. He was a boy with plump cheeks, curiously gazing around with big eyes. Great-uncle, great-aunt, cousin, and his wife, please come inside. Upon seeing this family, Li Che's lips curved up in a warm smile. To the great-uncle's family, Li Che was filled with gratitude. Had it not been for the great-uncle's family taking him in and raising him, he could not have survived so easily in these troubled times. And the marriage with Zhang Yi was also arranged with the help of the great-aunt. The old scholar, with a face full of smile lines, looked at Li Che, now thoroughly made a name for himself, and felt deeply moved. You've done well, Che. If your parents knew about it from beneath the springs, they would smile. The old scholar patted Li Che's shoulder, his eyes brimming with mirth. The great-aunt took out a piece of silver jewelry wrapped in a red cloth and handed it to Li Che. Che, this is XIXI's gift for her first birthday. You must accept it. Li Che did not decline but took it graciously and then looked towards his cousin, Li Zhengran, and his wife, Lu Chunming, who held the boy in her arms. Zhou is just half a year younger than XIXI, isn't he? His first birthday will be soon too, right? Is he starting to turn over smoothly now? Li Che asked with a smile. Very smoothly indeed. One kick of his little legs and he turns over like a windmill, lively and strong. Cousin Lu Chunming said to Li Che, beaming with pride. Being able to become a wood-carving master at Su's wood-carving shop, Cousin Lu Chunming was very aware of how prestigious that was, so her attitude was much warmer than before. Having exchanged pleasantries for a short while, Li Che then led the great-uncle's family to their seats. As the appointed hour arrived, the feast commenced, and attendants from Spring Breeze building called out the dishes, bringing out one delicious course after another to the tables. Nowadays, Li Che possessed the immortal craft Dao fruit, and the wood carvings he produced were in such demand for their rich implications that they sold out fast. Though not yet as established as the craftsman like Old Chen, his most expensive carving had sold for 50 taels. His net worth had already changed for the better. Although a feast at Spring Breeze building was costly, he could afford to host it. Moreover, with the master craftsmen from the large courtyard bringing gifts to the banquet, the event ended up not only costing nothing but even earning a good deal. Brother Che, third shopkeeper is here. Li Che, who was busy toasting with a few masters, heard that third shopkeeper had arrived and quickly went to greet him, carrying XIXI and accompanied by Zhang Yi. Ha ha ha, XIXI is 1 year old today. I came especially to see her, and this is a birthday gift for her. Third shopkeeper, Su Yu, was amiable and held in high esteem at the shop, and naturally, he did not exclude the intention of winning over Li Che. After all, Li Che was capable of crafting wood carvings with a true essence, which had begun to gain popularity in the inner city. Thank you, shopkeeper. XIXI, come and thank Uncle Su, Li Che, holding the lovely XIXI, called out with a smile. XIXI's eyes were bright and her eyelashes long, her skin was white and smooth like jade. Su Yu, catching one glance of her, liked her very much, took her from Li Che's hands, played with her for a while, and even seemed reluctant to give her back to Li Che. I won't partake in the birthday feast. I've got matters to attend to. Recently, the mysterious temple in the outer city has become restless and many malevolent creatures have emerged. The major noble families of the inner city have organized teams to clear them out. I have to go as well, Su Yu explained. He then took his leave. Manager Su is really a good person. Zhang Ye said softly at the side. Li Che nodded. Su Yu was indeed a good person, humble and without arrogance, rarely displaying the pride and extravagance of the noble families and clans. However, Li Che had heard that in the inner city, Su Yu was not favored and had been assigned to manage Su Ji in the outer city, which was equivalent to being removed from the power center of the Su family. Compared to the businesses in the inner city, Su Ji's wood carving shop in the outer city was after all not a big business. In these times, the gentler you are, the more you suffer. Unfortunately, the bad things always seem to happen to the honest folks, old Chen said, pinching his wine cup and walking over with a complex expression, shaking his head slightly. Just like the dangerous task of clearing out those evil spirits that fled from the mysterious temple beyond the city walls, which major noble families and clans would send their true core members. That Su Bai whose cultivation is extremely powerful, so he wasn't sent, but Su Yu, with his weak cultivation, was sent instead. Isn't it because Su Yu isn't favored within his clan? Old Chen heaved a sigh. Li Che, holding XIXI, looked at the lonely figure of Su Yu disappearing into the snowy wind, and was also silent. After a round of toasting and drinking, Old Chen was in high spirits today, who drank himself into a stupor and retired early to bed. Zhang Ye then took XIXI to the inner room to put her to sleep. Li Che rubbed his face with a handful of cold snow to sober up, then sat in the workshop of the side courtyard, lit the oil lamp, and continued working on the mechanism. With a thought, information appeared before his eyes. Name, Li Che. Bonds, daughter, Li Nuangzai. Dao fruit, immortal artisan, LV2, 89%, dragon elephant Vedra, LV1, 2%. His eyes fell on the immortal artisan Dao fruit. Within a year, the maturity of the immortal craft Dao fruit had risen to 89%, close to breaking through to level 3. Just one more mechanism to complete. He stood up, walked to a corner of the workshop, and gently turned a wood carving. Immediately, a hidden compartment appeared. From it, he took out a statue of Guanyin seated on a blood-colored lotus mountain. Guanyin had a compassionate and beneficent face, but upon closer inspection, one could discover that this light and shadow sculpture was actually made up of tens of thousands of tiny wooden spikes. This was one of the 3 mechanisms from the Tang's mechanism essentials that did not have inner strength requirements, the Guanyin blood lotus. Apart from the Guanyin blood lotus, there were 2 square matchboxes nearby. He took out one, placed it in the palm of his hand, and in a flash, tiny mechanical sounds emanated from the matchbox, and 8 slender spider legs grew out, embedding into the skin of Li Che's palm. With a gentle flick of his hand, incredibly fine silver threads shot out soundlessly, slicing a piece of wood meters away with extreme precision, the cut smooth and lustrous. With his fingers dancing, silver threads whipped throughout the room, with a mournful whistling sound, the noise of the air being sliced apart. After a while, the numerous silver threads, quick as lightning, retracted back into the matchbox. What an excellent 1,000-thread spider! With my minor accomplishment in skin refinement, even an ordinary martial artist in the sinew transforming stage would find it hard to withstand the thread slicing, he thought. But after reaching the muscle channeling stage, martial artists cultivate inner strength. If I were to enhance the inner strength, like old Chen said, the power would grow by another 30 to 40%, and with inner strength and martial techniques, the lethality would be even greater. I can't take this lightly. Still, I must prioritize strengthening my own martial prowess. Once I can cultivate inner strength and drive the 1,000-thread spider with it, its power will undoubtedly be even greater. Li Che placed both the 1,000-thread spider and the Guanyin blood lotus mechanisms back into the hidden compartment. He sat down in front of the oil lamp again and began to attempt other mechanisms from Tang's mechanism essentials. Due to the lack of inner strength and sufficient robust qi and blood, the production of other mechanisms during this period ended in failure. But that wasn't a major issue, as failure was also a part of accumulating experience. Once he began to cultivate inner strength, he would be able to complete them in one go. Suddenly, just as Li Che picked up the carving knife, his brows furrowed slightly. He left the workshop and quickly reached the entrance of the courtyard, his gaze piercing the distance. He saw a shadow, fast as lightning, shattering the dark and disappearing into the night. Li Che's eyes instantly sharpened, and he slowly looked down. There he saw a familiar 3-headed 6-armed spirit infant statue. Only this time, the 3-headed 6-armed spirit infant statue was not with one eye closed and the other open but was glaring with both eyes wide open, as if staring intently at him. Chapter 15, better to kill than to constantly watch and guard. Spirit Infant Statue. Li Che's eyes were icy cold, as expected. Even after moving into Su's wood carving shop and receiving protection from Su Ji, they still couldn't completely avoid the Spirit Infant sect's covetousness towards XIXI. Right after the completion of the first birthday celebration, the Spirit Infant sect had made its move. Relentless. Li Che clenched his fist, his eyes brimming with a murderous intent. However, recollecting the figure that had just vanished, his brow furrowed. Since our family moved into Su's courtyard, this Spirit Infant statue has never shown itself, yet today it has appeared. The only contact with outsiders was when those helpers and cooks from the Spring Breeze building were invited. But these helpers and cooks were already sent out of Su's courtyard by Steward Sun, not allowed to linger, so they can be ruled out. There are many old masters around, they are strong and have keen perception, yet someone managed to place the Spirit Infant statue in front of my house without them noticing. Li Che took a deep breath, feeling the wind and snow in the world turn a few degrees colder. A fierce look reflected in his deep, dark pupils. That means, this follower of the Spirit Infant sect, is very likely someone familiar from within Su's wood carving shop. There was someone from the Spirit Infant sect inside Su's wood carving shop. The coldness seemed to drill into his body through his pores at that very moment. This possibility is very high. I seem to have taken it too lightly. How can any place be absolutely safe? Li Che shook his head, his gaze fixating on the glaring Spirit Infant wood carving on the ground, his face full of coldness. Someone in the wood carving shop is from the Spirit Infant sect, who could it be? The faces flashed through Li Che's mind, but in the end, he still couldn't be certain. Shaking his head, Li Che grabbed the glaring wood carving from the ground, the blood and chi surged from beneath his skin, his 5 fingers suddenly emitted a golden light, and with a snap, the wood carving was instantly crushed. I'll find you. Never underestimate the resolve of a father protecting his child. A Spirit Infant statue appeared outside your courtyard. The next day, after a night of sound sleep, Chen Dabao's eyes suddenly narrowed when he heard Li Che's words. You suspect there might be followers of the Spirit Infant sect inside the wood carving shop? Chen Dabao squinted his eyes and said in a deep voice. Li Che nodded, but he couldn't guess who it was. Indeed, there's a great possibility. Being able to appear outside Su's courtyard, even in the outer city, is no easy feat. Followers of the Spirit Infant sect have already spread throughout Feilei City. If someone in the shop has become a follower, it really can't be certain. No, it should be certain. If the Spirit Infant sect wants to shake the rule of the great and powerful families of Feilei City, they must plant their people, and faith erosion is indeed the most effective method. Old Chen said in a heavy tone, Don't worry, I will look into it. It's actually not hard to find out. Becoming a follower of the Spirit Infant sect isn't easy to hide. If they are discovered, I will tell you right away. You also keep an eye out and be cautious on a daily basis. Third shopkeeper has been sent out of the city to exterminate evil beings from the mysterious temple, and during this time, there is actually no one in charge in the shop, which is the best time for the other party to make a move. But even if we really find out their identity, before they make a move against little stinky Xi, it isn't appropriate for me to act directly. Old Chen said with a furrowed brow. Upon hearing this, Li Che showed understanding. The Spirit Infant sect had spread throughout Feilei City. Becoming a follower of the Spirit Infant sect might disgust various forces, but they wouldn't specifically go out of their way to eliminate them. After all, before any trouble arises, it's just a matter of religious freedom. But at least knowing who it is will give me some peace of mind and I can be on guard. Li Che said earnestly. Old Chen, hearing this, also felt it made sense. Old Chen's investigation took 3 days. During these 3 days, Li Che spent more time training, as the feedback from the Dragon Elephant Vajra Deo fruit made his practice extremely vigorous. 3 days of hard training had increased the maturity of the Dragon Elephant Vajra to 5%. With full force channeling of the Deo fruit's power, he was stronger than at skin refinement completion, with the strength reaching 1,000 jins. Nonetheless, it was still just skin refinement completion. In the training field, Li Che was drenched with sweat, his skin glowing red, and the air was filled with hot waves and mist. He put down the stone weights, his eyelids drooping. Now if I want to break through to sinew transforming, I need the practice method for sinew transforming, but I can't seek Su Baihu. After all, the cultivation I have shown to Su Baihu is only great success in skin refinement. 2 days ago, Su Baihu came to inspect the cultivation, and Li Che showed him his great success in skin refinement. He had not fully exposed his skin refinement completion strength. Despite this, Su Baihu was already amazed. In just 1 year, reaching great success in skin refinement, his talent had somewhat surprised Su Baihu. Unfortunately, Su Baihu said that to cultivate the internal strength method and open the meridians, one needed to achieve perfection in skin refinement. Li Che wasn't willing to reveal his own achievement of perfection in skin refinement. Achieving great success in 1 year could be explained as exceptional talent, which was the level Su Baihu had been at originally. But achieving perfection in 1 year would be too exaggerated. So, this internal strength method and the technique for opening meridians, I'll have to find on my own, Li Che concluded. Dressed in clean clothes, with a glint in his eye, Li Che pondered for a moment. I have quite a few savings now. I can go to the marketplace in the outer city and look around. There might be cultivation methods for sale there, but I'll have to conceal my identity first, he thought. After finishing his training, Li Che returned to his position in the wood carving workshop. A few days ago, he had taken on a wood carving commission to carve an 8 treasures Maitreya statue. The client asked for a carving full of meaning and offered the price of a gold leaf, equivalent to 100 taels. This was the highest priced wood carving commission Li Che had ever received. Grasping the carving knife, he gently entered the wood, tearing the material apart, the wood chips fluttering down like blossoms. The Dao fruit of the immortal artisan pulsated slightly, and Li Che's gaze was focused. Everything around him seemed to disappear at that moment, and in his mind, all the carving techniques for the Maitreya statue flooded in. Old Chen, with a gourd of wine tied to his waist, knocked on the intricately carved wooden door of Li Che's workshop with a serious look on his face. Old Chen. Li Che, holding a file in his hand and carving on the wood, asked softly. I found out, Old Chen said as he found a chair to sit down on with a sigh, opened his gourd, took a drink of wine, and spoke in a somber voice. Who is it? Li Che's eyes turned cold, and the motion of the file grinding against the wood stopped abruptly. At Su's wood carving shop in the outer city, there are indeed quite a few woodcarvers and their families who have taken to worshipping the spirit infant sect this past year. I was indeed startled once I probed into it. But on the day of little Stinky Xi's first birthday, the person who came to the banquet and secretly worshipped the spirit infant sect, was only one person. Old Chen shook his head, showing a hint of horror in his eyes. The expansion of the spirit infant sect was faster and more terrifying than he had imagined. Li Che didn't care about these details. He was more concerned about who had set their sights on XIXI. Who is it? Li Che asked again. With a sigh, Old Chen replied, it's the second son of Steward Sun Changbiao. He's been married for 4 years and has been anxious for not having a son. His wife was enticed by the spirit infant sect, which promised a son if they worshipped it. So, Sun Changbiao also joined the section. Sun Changbiao? Li Che was startled, recalling the smiling steward son who had shown them around the property back then. Sun Changbiao was his second son and a woodcarver at Su Ji's wood carving shop, a 3-strike woodcarver. Usually gentle and amiable, Li Che hadn't expected he would join the spirit infant sect. And moreover, he had targeted XIXI. Li Che took a deep breath. What's Sun Changbiao's strength? Li Che asked expressionlessly. Old Chen raised his eyebrows and replied, average talent. He took 3 years to achieve skin refinement, and just in the past 2 years, he's completed the sinew transforming and picked up an internal strength method. Thanks, Old Chen, I've got it, Li Che said, suddenly showing a smile, thanking Chen Dabao cheerfully. Don't be rash, you've just reached major accomplishment in skin refinement, you won't be able to beat Sun Changbiao. Besides, without evidence, taking action would only bring verbal disputes, and it wouldn't look good with regards to Old Sunday. Chen Dabao warned Li Che, then took another drink of wine. Now that we know who it is, we just need to watch him and keep an eye on him, he advised. XIXI has me looking after her, that Sun Changbiao won't have a chance, Li Che nodded silently in agreement. Chen Dabao didn't say much more, got up leisurely humming a tune, and didn't head to his own workshop to work. Familiar with the area, he casually made his way to Li Che's small courtyard to play with XIXI. Little Stinky Xi, your grandpa Chen is here. Meanwhile, Li Che methodically continued to carve the 8 treasures Maitreya statue. After completing the day's work, Li Che stood up, put on a broad-brimmed hat, took a black cloak, and looked at the snowflakes endlessly drifting down from the sky in the courtyard. I said, never underestimate a father's obsession with protecting his family. Having so many daughters, just for lacking a son, you plan on exchanging my daughter for your desired son. It's truly unreasonable. He reached out his hand and caught a snowflake. Li Che's expression gradually turned cold. Old Chen said, just watch and guard against him. But to Li Che, watching, guarding, are all less effective than killing. Chapter 16, Angry Vajra, you are not innocent. Watching and guarding against the enemy, in Li Che's eyes, it would be better to kill him. Since the opponent had joined the Spirit Infant sect, targeting his daughter XIXI, he was akin to a ticking time bomb, never knowing when he might make his move. If that was a foregone conclusion, then why wait for the other party to strike first, instead of taking the initiative to attack? Recalling the angry Spirit Infant statue placed outside the courtyard last night, the adversary's actions were undoubtedly a provocation against him as a father, as if glaring furiously at him, loudly proclaiming, if you dare to interfere, you'll be killed. Was Sun Changbiao innocent? In Li Che's heart, not in the slightest. The moment he targeted his daughter XIXI, joined the Spirit Infant sect, and sought to take another person's child's life to fulfill his own desire for offspring, he was already stained with blood on his hands. Adjusting his straw hat, Li Che exhaled a breath of hot air from his throat. Afterward, his figure plunged into the wind and snow. Su's wood carving shop's courtyard was enormous, extremely vast, encompassing a large area, almost like a small city. Inside was a network of paths crisscrossing, with courtyards standing in rows, and high walls towering between them, creating separations through the alleys. Li Che slipped into an alleyway, stripping off the clothes he wore and donning a black cloak. Then, he took out a wooden mask he had crafted himself, originally intended to bring back to amuse XIXI as a toy. But now, he would use it temporarily. Because XIXI was born in the year of the ox, Li Che carved a bull-faced mask that had a somewhat cartoonish and cute style. Wearing the cute bull mask, Li Che felt as if the whole world had become separated from him, his every breath becoming light and free. Sun Changbiao. Li Che whispered the name softly. The next moment, he stimulated his Dao fruit dragon elephant Vajra. Crack, crack, crack. Sounds like colliding bones echoed around, crackling like popping beans. Underneath Li Che's black cloak, his muscles began to writhe, a tingling sensation spreading all over his body, and soon his stature grew taller and more robust, his back muscles suddenly becoming as hard as iron, coiling and writhing like dragons. Flesh dragon elephant, Vajra indestructible, horizontal refinement unparalleled. These were the characteristics of the Dao fruit dragon elephant Vajra. After Li Che chose to activate it, his body transformed completely. The cultivation and blood force, which had been suppressed and contained within the Dao fruit, surged out, converging to his physical body. And his body too underwent an active transformation, with his strength magnifying. Li Che, originally about 1.75 m in height, soared to around 1.90 m after activating the dragon elephant Vajra, his flesh bulking up significantly, becoming firm and sturdy with an overwhelming sense of oppression. Strength. Li Che's eyes sparkled behind the cute bull mask as he glanced at his hands that were like palm leaf fans filled with terrifying power, and clenched them fiercely, vaguely causing a rumbling like howling winds. As if imbued with the power of the dragon elephant. Such a transformation should be called Vajra transformation, I suppose. Li Che murmured softly. At that moment, he felt like a giant elephant of the jungle, possessing the terrifying might to trample fierce tigers and wild lions. This was the pure physical strength change brought about by the Dao fruit. Horizontal refinement unparalleled. Underneath the mask, Li Che's facial expression seemed to spread into a slight smile due to his flesh swelling. Afterward, his burly figure stepped forward, shattering the wind and snow. Sun Changbiao's courtyard was located on the west side of Su's courtyard. As the second son of Steward Sun, after splitting from the family, Sun Changbiao's residence naturally was exemplary, featuring a triple courtyard with a spacious and bright main yard. Sun Changbiao held an umbrella, returning to his courtyard after finishing work. He let out a breath, his face turning somewhat ugly. Chen Dabao is watching me, so quick, he's found his way to me already. Standing in the courtyard, Sun Changbiao's expression flickered with uncertainty. Old Chen was investigating him, and he had certainly noticed it. No matter how much he tried to conceal it, joining the spirit infant sect was ultimately something he couldn't hide forever. After all, he had once personally gone to the altar of the spirit infant sect to offer incense. So be it, if he's watching, then he is. If I don't take action, Chen Dabao wouldn't dare to kill me. Without evidence, he won't make a move. What I need to do is just pass on the information, looking for an opportunity. A spirit baby, once delivered to the altar, my son's wish will surely come true. Sun Changbiao desperately wanted a son. No, it should be said that both he and his wife desperately wanted a son. Suddenly, Sun Changbiao, standing in the courtyard, had his thoughts interrupted. Dad! Dad, dinner's ready! A timid voice called out. Sun Changbiao looked over and saw his eldest daughter leading the three younger ones, nervously carrying dishes. They had clearly just finished cooking and were coming out of the kitchen. Got it. Sun Changbiao said dismissively. Then, he closed his umbrella, shook off the snowflakes, dusted his long coat, and stepped into the warmth of the inner room. The four daughters served steaming dishes on the dining table, and the eldest one, behaving obediently, took her three sisters by the hand, pursed her lips, and left the cozy inner room, consciously and skillfully heading to the kitchen for their meal. At the table, Sun Changbiao and his wife, Madame Lu, began to eat heartily. Husband, how is that matter coming along? The deputy incense master is pressing hard. The child from Master Li's house is 1 in 100 spirit babies. If we can send her to the sect, the Dharma master will surely grant us a son. Madame Lu caressed her slightly bulging belly, her eyes filled with anticipation. Sun Changbiao frowned. Don't rush me, I have it under control. What do women understand? Chen Dabao is not someone easily offended. His strength is formidable. He's someone many of the senior members of the inner city Su family want to win over. Old Chen's appreciation and affection for Li Chei's daughter were clear to him. If he angered Old Chen, he dreaded the brutal beating that could result, or even worse, it might cost him his life if handled poorly. Eat your meal. Sun Changbiao picked up a piece of stir-fried pork with his chopsticks, and immediately his eyebrows knitted together. Stupid girl, why so much salt? Trying to choke her father to death. Outside. The tall young girl leading her sisters away from the house pursed her lips, as though she heard the scolding coming from inside. Her complexion paled, and she hurriedly pulled her sisters toward the kitchen. It was too cold outside. The kitchen, warmed by the remnants of the hearth fire, was more comfortable. After the girls had left, a towering, mountainous figure wearing a conical hat and a mask silently appeared on the walkway, completely untouched by the swirling snowflakes. Watching the silhouette of the girls entering the kitchen, the eyes beneath the cute bull mask were chillingly calm. Knock, knock, knock. After downing a cup of warm, sweet wine and picking up a piece of fried meat, Sun Changbiao ate with so much oil dripping from his mouth that he looked utterly content. Suddenly, he heard a knocking at the door, and his complacent gaze instantly turned into a frown. Stupid girl, didn't I say not to make noise during dinner? Can't you understand? Seeing her husband frown, his wife quickly slapped down her chopsticks and scolded. Sun Changbiao raised his hand, stopping his wife from getting more upset. You're pregnant, don't get angry, take care of our son. After saying that, Sun Changbiao stood up, casually took a rattan stick hanging on the inner room wall, and while picking the meat stuck between his teeth, he flicked the stick. However, just as he reached the door, bang! A thunderous explosion sounded, accompanied by flying wood chips, as the door was suddenly kicked open. Snow and cold wind rushed in fiercely. A massive leg, resembling a divine whip, lashed out suddenly. The kick landed on Sun Changbiao's abdomen, the terrifying force exploding out like a cannonball. His eyes almost bulged out as his body curved like a shrimp. He was catapulted onto the dining table, smashing the spread of good dishes into a sloppy mess. Blarg! Sun Changbiao spat out a mist of blood, with an acrid sensation in his abdomen as if it had been kicked to pieces. He was numb all over, struggling to lift his head. Who are you? His first thought was that Chen Dabao had acted. But upon seeing the stranger with the oppressive presence of a mountain, Sun Changbiao was dumbfounded. It wasn't Chen Dabao. How could the frail old man Chen Dabao be so powerful and robust? Then, who could it be? Who had he offended? Chapter 17, Bone Tempering Thousand Spiders, no longer kind. The person opposite was wearing a cute bull mask, but the eyes beneath it had not a hint of adorableness. Just by locking eyes for an instant, Sun Changbiao felt the taste of death. An overwhelming killing intent, like a surging river breaching its banks, threatened to collapse his psychological defenses. "This is Su's wood carving shop. You dare to commit murder here?" Bearing the intense pain in his abdomen, Sun Changbiao roared in the face of his fear of death. Blood and energy surged wildly within him, his muscles tensed and hummed, and inner strength slithered through his palms like thin snakes. His muscle channeling stage cultivation was on full display, readying a counterattack. Sun Changbiao was well aware that this was Su's courtyard, where many old woodcarvers resided. If he could just stall for time, perhaps help would arrive. At the very least, his older brother and father lived in the nearby courtyard. If they heard the commotion, they could immediately come to his aid. Li Che watched Sun Changbiao indifferently, whose desperate cries were a far cry from his usual gentle and graceful demeanor. Actually, Li Che could not have imagined that someone who was so amiable outwardly could treat his own biological daughter with such brutality and malevolence. It was one thing to command his daughter to cook and do chores, but to lash at her with a rattan whip for any dissatisfaction was another. You can know the face, but not the heart. Of course, none of these were important. What mattered was that Li Che heard Sun Changbiao's words. Confirming Sun Changbiao's malicious intentions toward XIXI, this man must be the one who placed the furious spirit infant wood carving last night, intending to offer XIXI to the Dharma Master in exchange for a son. A villain. That was cause enough for his death. At that thought, a surge of malevolence and killing intent erupted in Li Che's heart. Bang! Stimulated by the fear of death, Sun Changbiao let out a fierce bellow, and his arms smashed into the ground with such force that he sprung up. His back muscles tensed and snapped straight like a bowstring, as he hurled two fearsome punches towards Li Che. Muscle channeling force, along with inner strength, burst forth. However, the towering and sturdy figure wearing the bull mask merely lifted a hand, his fan-like fist suddenly clenched, and he pushed out a punch. Instantly, a dragon's chant and an elephant's trumpeting were heard, a terrifying sound accompanied by strong sound waves that vibrated the air and spiraled violently within the room. When fist met fist, a sound of shattering bone exploded. Sun Changbiao let out a wail of misery, terror flooding his eyes. Bone tempering. A quenched bone warrior. Such strength could only be that of a quenched bone warrior. How could there be a quenched bone warrior within the courtyard, coming out of nowhere to kill him? With a punch that broke Sun Changbiao's arm bones, Li Che's eyes beneath the cute bull mask remained detached and unfazed. Underneath the sleeve, his fingers lightly flicked, and the Dao fruit immortal craftsman subtly leaped. An invisible silver thread, as if tearing through the air, sinuous as spider silk and as sharp as an unsheathing sword artifact, danced wildly, stirring up a sudden gust. The mechanism, 1,000 spider threads. Accompanied by several sounds of twanging and slicing. With a grasp of his hand, the threads swiftly retracted, sliding back into his puffy sleeves. The burly figure adjusted his hat brim and shook his sleeves, then bounded into the courtyard in a few leaps. He opened the courtyard door from the inside and went straight out, disappearing into the snowstorm. Sun Changbiao stared dumbfounded at that towering departing figure. A red line slowly emerged on his neck, dribbling out beads of blood. The overturned 8 immortals dining table he was leaning against was silently split, the cut remarkably smooth. Also neatly severed was Sun Changbiao's head. With a thud, his head tilted to one side and fell from his neck, accompanied by spurting scorching blood. The entire room reeked of blood. Madame Lu, who had collapsed beside him, was already scared witless, trembling uncontrollably like chaff in the wind. Only when the howling wind and drifting snow from the shattered door outside swept in did she muster a scream from the depths of her throat, utmost terror in her shriek. Murder! There's been a murder! In the dark alleyway, Li Che withdrew the power of the dragon elephant Vajra Dao fruit, and his body immediately returned to normal. He redressed, took out the cute bull mask, and with a clench of his fingers, the mask instantly crumbled into a pile of wood shavings. He pressed down on his bamboo hat and listened to the sobbing cries that drifted along with the sound of the wind and snow. There was not much change in his expression. If Sun Changbiao did not die, he would pose a grave threat to XIXI, and Li Che feared that if he ever failed to watch over XIXI one day, it would be he himself who would be weeping. To live in this world, one's heart must not be too kind, nor one's hands too soft. Li Che no longer claimed to be a good man. This was not the first time he had killed. First, it had been the dark-skinned brute, and now Sun Changbiao. Li Chai's hands were stained with fresh blood. But all he wanted was to protect his daughter well. All of this was his duty as a father. I am still too weak. If I could, do away with the spirit infant sect, XIXI's safety would no longer be threatened. Li Chai looked at his palm and murmured softly. Then, with his head held high and chest puffed out, he stepped out of the alley. Li Chai returned to the courtyard, where old Chen was playing with XIXI. He extravagantly used his inner strength to melt away the snow in the entire yard, revealing the dry ground, allowing the little girl to toddle around with her baby walker, wobbling here and there. Daddy! The little girl's eyes immediately brightened when she saw Li Chai. Wobbling, she ran toward Li Chai, who blossomed into a smile. Does little stinky Xi miss Daddy? Picking up the little girl, Li Chai teased her small nose. Old Chen immediately felt jealous, no longer using his inner strength to melt the snow, and the snowflakes began to flutter down from the sky. It's still Daddy's princess. Grandpa Chen has been with you all day, and as soon as Daddy comes back, you don't want Grandpa Chen anymore. Old Chen pouted, and the air seemed to fill with the scent of vinegar. Li Chai immediately burst into laughter, pointing at Old Chen. Zhangya came out from the kitchen with hot dishes, smiling softly. Uncle Chen, my husband, it's time to eat. She placed the dishes on the table, which were very rich, with meat and fish, and quite nourishing. Taking a small bowl, she picked out some fish meat and mixed it with plain porridge, then began to feed XIXI, who was sitting in the baby chair, tapping on the wooden bowl. Li Chai and Old Chen began to eat, the two of them drinking and dining, while also chatting casually. Zhang Ye's culinary skills were excellent, and Old Chen often came to freeload meals without feeling any burden, especially since the cost of the food was not a burden at all to Li Chai these days. Furthermore, Old Chen, in order to spend time with XIXI, started to reduce his own work and often referred his wood-carving customers to Li Chai, allowing Li Chai to take on many well-paying jobs. After dinner, Old Chen left with his hands behind his back, humming a tune, and walked away in a cheerful mood. However, no sooner had he left than hurried footsteps approached, and at the corner, he encountered a figure with a panicked expression. Little Lu, where are you rushing to? Old Chen recognized the person. It was the youngest son of old Lu, the woodcarver from the wood-carving shop. Oh, it's Master Chen. Alas! Something's happened at my sister's place. Little Lu looked distressed, but upon seeing Chen Dabao, he still stopped to greet him. Old Chen's expression suddenly turned solemn. Little Liu's sister, wasn't that Sun Changbiao's wife? In Su's courtyard, a villain suddenly appeared, broke into my brother-in-law's yard, and brutally killed him. Alas! My father sent me to notify the manager, alas! Little Lu sighed endlessly, exchanged a few words with Old Chen, and then hurriedly ran out of the courtyard. The cold wind rattled, bone-chillingly cold, and there was a great stillness between heaven and earth. Sun Changbiao, dead? Just a while ago, he had informed Li Chai that it was Sun Changbiao who had set his sights on XIXI. And now, Sun Changbiao was dead in his own house, beaten to death by someone. Coincidence? Chen Dabao clenched his wine gourd, his expression suddenly becoming complex. Chapter 18, The Singable and Tearful Father's Love, Guanyin Angry Cry Ghost Suppressing Statue. Chen Dabao stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching little Lu leave. Snowflakes danced down from the sky, landing on his graying hair. His eyes held a hint of distraction and complexity. Sun Changbiao was dead, but what Chen Dabao found noteworthy wasn't the death itself. In this era, the death of a man was all too common. What concerned him was Li Chai's decisiveness. They had just discovered that the person coveting XIXI had joined the Spirit Infant sect and turned out to be Sun Changbiao. As soon as the workday ended, Li Chai had hurried off to kill Sun Changbiao. Decisive, ruthless, quick to act. Was it really Li Chai who did it? Where did he get the strength to kill Sun Changbiao? Even Chen Dabao began to feel bewildered and doubtful. His leisurely stroll turning serious, he changed his course and headed towards Sun Changbiao's house. As he approached the house, he heard earth-shattering cries. Outside the courtyard, a crowd bustled about, and there was Steward Sun, his old face turning ashen, his whole body trembling. Clenching his fists, he was a mix of anger and sorrow. Who was it? Who killed my son? My son was kind and honest, always treating others well. Who would be so vicious? Steward Sun cried inconsolably, the agony of losing a child piercing his heart. Madame Lu sat in a chair, propped up by others, her tears falling ceaselessly, sobbing loudly. Old Chen moved in closer, made some inquiries, and suddenly felt a peculiar twist in his thoughts. A towering figure as imposing as a mountain, hands like fan-shaped leaves, he kicked open the door with one foot, breaking Sun Changbiao. A quenched bone warrior made the move, indeed. It couldn't have been Li Che. Of course, Li Che had only just achieved major accomplishment in skin refinement, he would only have been beaten to death confronting Sun Changbiao. How very strange, such a coincidence. Chen Dabao found it quite astonishing as well. Looking at Sun Changbiao's body, head severed, bones and organs crushed by the kick, he shook his head, death had come to him in a particularly tragic way. Turning his head, he saw Sun Changbiao's 4 daughters standing in the corner, timid and apprehensive. The eldest daughter, looking at her father's corpse, had no sorrow in her eyes, but instead, she almost seemed pleased. The news of Sun Changbiao's horrendous murder spread like a storm throughout Su's courtyard in no time. It caused quite an uproar. The third shopkeeper was outside the city and not in the shop when it happened, resulting in considerable impact. The next day, the inner city branch of Suji sent people to investigate, accompanied by arrest officers from the outer city yamen. Su Baihu, draped in a fox fur cloak, with strands of solid blood energy like electrical arcs moving on his imposing figure, glanced down at Sun Changbiao's corpse in the coffin, a trace of surprise flickering in his eyes. The strength of 1,000 caddies, one kick shattering the organs, and the exchange of punches broke Sun Changbiao's arm bones with a crushing force. Beyond doubt, the perpetrator must be a dominant quenched bone warrior. As for the final cut severing the head, being so neat indicates an extremely sharp weapon, it seems to be the work of a sword artifact. Next to Su Baihu, Head Constable Zhao Chuanxiang from the outskirts government office, also a robust figure with a broad-bladed saber at his waist, narrowed his eyes as he analyzed. Head Constable Zhao, I'll need to trouble you with this matter. I never thought that after so many years of peace, my Su family shop would suffer such brazen violence. Su Baihu bowed. Zhao Chuanxiang laughed and waved dismissively, perhaps it's another family seeking to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, targeting Sun Changbiao to send a message and disturb Suji. But what's odd? Why target Sun Changbiao? Why him? Su Baihu was also puzzled, unable to come to a conclusion after some thought. Zhao Chuanxiang chuckled, raising his hand with a light flick. Search the place, see if you can find any clues. As he finished speaking, the arrest officers brought by Zhao Chuanxiang proceeded to search Sun Changbiao's large house. Madame Lu, who was sitting and weeping in the chair, showed a flash of panic in her eyes when she saw the officers searching, followed by despair. Soon after, an officer called out, "Found something." He returned with a 3-headed 6-armed spirit infant statue in his arms. Spirit infant sect. Su Baihu's eyes widened in anger, his hair standing on end as he turned to Madame Lu and bellowed, "You worship the spirit infant sect." Zhao Chuanxiang narrowed his eyes, patting his hand lightly, "So it's the spirit infant sect, that clarifies things." He glanced at the 4 girls standing in the corner, the youngest looking only 2 or 3 years old, tilting her head, her hair messy, and her face confused. Su Baihu's face darkened, knowing the spirit infant sect had infiltrated his shop was an anticipated circumstance, but having it exposed so abruptly was embarrassing for Suji. Now the matter seems clear. Sun Changbiao had joined the spirit infant sect, and his daughter must have caught their eye for sacrifice. Unwilling to comply, Sun Changbiao chose to protect his daughter's life, thus intervening and succumbing to a vile hand. Tisk tisk, truly a tearjerker of fatherly love. Madame Lu, you say it is or it isn't? Sitting in her chair and still crying, Madame Lu suddenly froze. Mingled among the crowd, Li Che couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he heard the constable's analysis. Sun Changbiao had indeed died of fatherly love, but it was his, Li Che's, fatherly love. Without further ado, Li Che headed to the practice field to train. The atmosphere at the training field was fiery and enthusiastic. The new woodcarvers recruited by the shop this year had just received the skin refinement cultivation method and were brimming with fighting spirit, carrying stone locks and continuously refining their bodies. Zhao Xian, with her straight and slender legs, was giving pointers to the newcomers. When she saw Li Che appear, she greeted him with a smile brimming with warmth. "Master Li has arrived." Li Che smiled warmly and nodded in response. Wang Zhenpin, drenched in sweat, also stopped his training. Master Li, have you heard? Master Sun's death was terribly gruesome, a villain crushed his entire skeleton and tortured him to a brutal death. In the end, they even cut off his head. It was too dreadful to behold. The corner of Li Chei's mouth twitched again. The story had become more exaggerated. Was he really so ferocious? Nevertheless, Li Chei joined the conversation with a sigh on his face. While a few elders chatted, the new recruits did not dare to join in. After a while, Li Chei began his training. His publicly displayed cultivation level was now at great success in skin refinement, which already made many people envious. Li Chei would not skip his daily training, for the Dao fruit of the dragon elephant Vajra could mature through diligent practice, making daily training indispensable. However, while he was training, he began to ponder the tendon activation technique and the internal strength method. Just as he was deep in thought, Su Baihu arrived at the practice field. Second shopkeeper. Everyone immediately ceased their movements and greeted him with a fist and palm salute. Su Baihu's face softened slightly. I came to investigate Sun Changbiao's cause of death in the outer city today. It's also a good opportunity to give you some guidance on your cultivation levels. His gaze fell on Li Chei, showing a look of satisfaction. To reach major accomplishment in skin refinement within a year demonstrates excellent body refinement talent. Keep up the hard work and do not slack off. If you have any needs, feel free to mention them. Upon hearing this, Li Chei clasped his fist and said, Second shopkeeper. Now that I've achieved major accomplishment in skin refinement, may I request a share of the tendon activation technique and the internal strength method? Today, I passed by Master Sun's courtyard and saw his dreadful death, which left me terrified. I've heard that Master Sun was like a mountain of fatherly love, dying tragically to protect his daughter, and I'm scared. Li Chei's words were filled with sincerity and worry. Su Baihu fell silent upon hearing this, as he was indeed aware of Li Chei's situation. Li Chei had joined Su Ji for protection against the spirit infant sect, and now this incident had occurred. Indeed, the Su's reputation had been somewhat tarnished, a sign of diminishing prestige. However, the rules of the Su family could not be broken. Su Baihu shook his head, a look of regret on his face. According to the rules of Su Ji, you must reach perfection in skin refinement before we can pass on the tendon activation technique and internal strength method to you. You need a solid foundation to proceed, otherwise, the high rise is prone to collapse. If we pass it on to you too soon, I'm afraid you might be tempted to practice it prematurely, injuring your body. This is for your own good. Li Chei showed a look of regret upon hearing this. Seeing his reaction, Su Baihu hesitated for a moment before a porcelain bottle appeared in his hand. He handed it to Li Chei. Here's what we'll do. This bottle contains skin refinement pills, 6 in total. Consider it a reward for achieving major accomplishment in skin refinement. Take 1 pill every 5 days. With your talent, in just over a month, you should be able to achieve perfection in skin refinement. At that time, you can come to me for the tendon activation technique and internal strength method. Li Chei felt a bit disappointed, but he accepted the skin refinement pills with a look of joy, already deciding in his heart to visit the marketplace to see if he could purchase an internal strength technique. Old Chen had mentioned that they were not people from the Su family, so the meridian opening method and internal strength technique they were qualified to practice were not particularly profound and not much different from the high-quality internal strength techniques available for purchase in the marketplace. Seeing Li Chei accept the elixir, a smile appeared on Su Baihu's rugged face. Li Chei, I have a job specially for you. I know your wood carvings are full of meaning. The young master of the Si family from the inner city has sought me out and wants to commission you to carve a wood carving, with a compensation of 5 gold leaves. Li Chei's heart jolted at those words. 5 gold leaves. 500 taels. A wealthy client indeed. But this undoubtedly also implied that the client's request was anything but simple. The wood carving job was bound to be extremely difficult. Li Chei, with a solemn expression, clasped his fists and focused his gaze. May I know what the Si family young master wishes to have carved? Su Baihu looked at the cautious Li Chei and smiled. The 9-headed Guanyin Angry Cry Town Ghost Statue. Chapter 19, Angry Cry Ghost Suppressing, the Law of Divinity. 9-headed Guanyin Angry Cry Town Ghost Statue. Su Baihu spoke solemnly, and as the words fell, the sound of the howling wind and snow seemed to vanish without a trace. Angry Cry Town Ghost. Li Chei's expression changed slightly. Nowadays, he was no longer the naive porter who focused solely on moving timber, as he possessed some understanding of the wood carving craft. In this vast Fei city, divided into inner city and outer city, the inner city is bustling like a dream, inhabited by noble families and clans that have flourished here over many lengthy years. It is extremely rich and bustling. These noble families and clans each possess their own cultivation dharma and are rumored to be cultivating the divine method. In fact, each of those families controls a wood carving shop, attracting and nurturing woodcarvers because if a wood carving possesses sufficiently profound charm, it can be of great benefit to noble family cultivators who practice the divine methods. One can extract divine cultivation from the wood carvings. This is also why the wood carvings crafted by woodcarvers can be sold at high prices. Within the wood carving shops of the inner city sit wood carving masters, whose works, full of spirit, are extremely precious. Each piece is worth 100, if not 1,000, gold. Over the past year, Li Che had heard many such stories from old Chen. Becoming a wood carving master is not easy, for the spirit infused into the wood carvings must reach the level of overflow and take shape. Li Che's immortal artisan Dao fruit had reached LV2, which allowed him to imbue his sculptures with soulful essences, but to reach master level, he still fell short. Perhaps when he reached LV3, he would achieve master standards. The SI family will provide the statue blueprint, you just need to carve it, Su Baihu said, his large frame imposing and his voice deep as he looked intently at Li Che. This is a precious opportunity, a result of the reputation you've built from your past carvings. You've been granted this because of the substantial essence in the wood carvings you've created. You don't need to feel too pressured. Even if the carving fails and the essence of the finished wood carving is not rich enough, there's no harm. After all, you've only been a wood carver for a year and there's still room for growth. Treat it as practice, Su Baihu reassured. The task for 5 gold leaves was one Li Che did not intend to let slip by. I'll give it a try, Li Che said, cupping his fists in thanks. Seeing Li Che accept the task, Su Baihu's mood improved greatly. He patted Li Che's shoulder and said, the SI family's young master wants your wood carving, probably for cultivating the divine method. The SI family's divine method is known as Angry Cry Town Ghost. If you succeed, you will have no worries about food and clothing in the future and might even have the opportunity to break into the master realm. Divinity. Angry Cry Town Ghost. Li Che recalled the discussions he had heard from old Chen. Cultivation methods include body refinement, inner strength, and divinity, with the divine method being the most mysterious, inner strength being precious, and body refinement being relatively more common. The divine method is usually controlled by the noble families and clans of the inner city, completely inaccessible to outsiders. Su Baihu looked at Li Che and spoke softly, divine methods are commonly divided into 7 branches, joy, anger, sorrow, thought, grief, fear, and shock. Angry Cry Town Ghost belongs to the divinity of sorrow, a divine method profound and infinite in mystery, but it requires daily accumulation of divinity and isn't easy. Su Baihu did not say much more, giving Li Che a deep look, your talent in wood carving is exceptional. If you become a wood carving master in the future, it is possible to obtain the divine method from our Su family. Therefore, do not slack off. Hearing this, Li Che quickly showed a grateful expression and bowed with his fists. Su Baihu nodded with satisfaction and took out a folded piece of paper from his sleeve. Here is the blueprint for the 9-headed Guanyin Angry Cry Town Ghost statue. The deadline is 1 month. I will come for you after a month. At that time, I will take you to the inner city to trade with that young master of the SI family. Li Che nodded and took the blueprint. After finishing his training, Li Che cleaned up the workshop and left Su's wood carving shop. He used the excuse that he was going to buy some yellow wine and sliced cured meat, but in reality, he planned to visit the marketplace in the outer city to see the situation. If he could not obtain the tendon activation technique and internal strength technique from Su Baihu, he would have to find them himself. Fortunately, the tendon activation technique was just a body refinement technique. Although rare, it was not as hard to find as the divine methods. After leaving the wood carving shop, he reached a narrow alley. Upon confirming there was no one around, he activated his dragon elephant Vajra, growing taller and more imposing. He then took out a wood carving mask, placed it on his face, wrapped himself in a poncho, and disappeared into the long street. The marketplace of Fei City, located in the western part of the outer city, was in a rather dilapidated area with rows of shabby huts and old buildings. It appeared quite wretched. Yet, this was the trading hub for the cultivators of Fei City, most of whom were adventurers from outside the city. They battled demons and braved mysterious temples to acquire cultivation resources. Cultivators would spread out worn cloth on the ground, turning it into a makeshift storefront, and start conducting business with an assortment of strange trinkets on display. As Li Che made his way through the market, his eyes shifted curiously, making his first visit here mainly because he hadn't cultivated before and didn't dare come, fearing he might lose his life for nothing. After browsing various stalls for a while, he finally stopped in front of a vendor who was also wrapped up tightly. A sense of familiarity in their aura gave Li Che a certain degree of comfort. Recently acquired items from the mysterious temple, would you be interested? The stall owner gave a cursory glance at Li Che, who was wrapped so tightly that not a breeze could pass through, and spoke in a hoarse voice. Mysterious temple. Li Che remained silent. That was an extremely dangerous place outside the city, rumored to be where the heritage of the spirit infant sect originated from. The vast Great Vista was so unstable largely due to the mysterious temple that had sprung up like bamboo after rain, and the rampant evil creatures that had escaped from the out-of-control temple. For martial artists in pursuit of cultivation, the suppressed mysterious temple was a place to explore for resources. However, Li Che had little interest in the mysterious temple right now, as he had come to the marketplace seeking a body refinement technique. Does the merchant have any body refinement techniques for sale? Li Che altered his voice slightly as he spoke hoarsely. Body refinement technique. The merchant, sitting cross-legged on the ground, looked up oddly upon hearing this. What level do you seek? Tendon activation technique, Li Che said. Tendon activation technique? The merchant's gaze flickered. I happen to have a middle vehicle body refinement technique that I scrounged up from the mysterious temple to the south of the city, which can cultivate until bone tempering. Would you be interested? Li Che's towering stature was extremely imposing, but the merchant was not intimidated, thinking, what strength could someone who needs to buy a tendon activation technique possess? I only need the tendon activation technique, Li Che responded indifferently. Upon hearing this, the merchant stopped wasting words. He was quite efficient, directly pulling out an old book with a blue cover from his bosom and handing it to Li Che. After flipping through and confirming that it was indeed the middle vehicle tendon activation technique, Li Che was satisfied and closed the book. If you have any internal strength techniques, you can also bring them out for me to have a look, he said. In reality, Li Che did not hold out much hope for an internal strength technique. However, if all else failed, he could go back to Old Chen to buy one. Old Chen had said before that he could sell an internal strength technique to him. Suggests, internal strength techniques are monopolized by the noble families and clans. We small stall merchants could not bear the crime of selling them. If discovered, I would have no way to survive in Fei City. The merchant shook his head. Li Che felt regret in his heart but did not care much. Then this tendon activation technique will do. The merchant raised 5 fingers, 500 taels. Li Che chuckled, slowly standing up tall and sturdy like a mountain. His blood surged, intertwining within him, causing the surrounding air to become static and an extreme sense of oppression, as if the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing, crashing down towards the other person. Did this man think he was a martial artist stuck at skin refinement completion, desperately needing the tendon activation technique, and thus taking advantage of his urgent need? Indeed, he had guessed correctly. 100 taels, that should be enough, Li Che said indifferently. I'm buying it to give to a junior, it doesn't have to be too expensive. The merchant, sensing this imposing manner and having frequented outside the city daringly entering the mysterious temple for loot, naturally had good judgment. This burly man's blood was so vigorous, the oppressive feeling was not inferior to that of a quenched bone warrior, and he had even tainted his hands with human lives. He was decidedly a ferocious man who regarded human lives as grass. An unremarkable handwritten script of the middle vehicle tendon activation technique, selling it for 100 taels was still a profit. After all, he had copied several volumes at home. Deal. The merchant immediately said earnestly. Li Che, upon hearing this, threw down 100 taels and, taking the tendon activation technique, turned and left, disappearing into the marketplace. The merchant was quick to pull up his fabrics and left the stall too. Having acquired the tendon activation technique, Li Che was in a good mood and could begin opening his sinews tomorrow. After leaving the marketplace, he found a secluded place, shed his cloak, found a place to hide it well, then leisurely went for marinated meat and wine, and also stopped by a pastry shop to buy a box of osmanthus cakes that Zhang Yi liked to eat, before returning to the wood carving shop. Snowflakes fluttered and danced in the sky. He treaded over the thick snow covering the blue stone pavement. Li Che walked towards his way home. However, his steps gradually came to a halt. Holding the marinated meat, a jar of wine, and the osmanthus cakes, Li Che's brows slowly knit together, staring at the figure standing at the gate of his yard. Wearing a half-smile, standing tall with a side knife, was the Yamen arrest officer Zhao Chuanxiang. Chapter 20, If the child doesn't like you, don't force it. In the midst of snow and wind, a figure stood resolute. With a rainbow-like vitality enveloping him from the outside, he was remarkably noticeable amid the vast greyness, carrying a policeman's saber, his gaze extremely sharp yet with a hint of amusement. From afar, he saw Li Che carrying braised pork, a jar of wine, and osmanthus cakes. Li Che paused in his steps. His first thought was, his misdeeds had been exposed. But after careful contemplation, there was no reason for it. He, with the Dao fruit of dragon elephant Vajra, had changed his physical form without leaving any clues. If the crime had not been exposed, then why had the Yamen's arrest officer, after investigating the death of Sun Changbiao, not left but instead appeared in front of his courtyard? What could he possibly want? For a moment, Li Che couldn't figure out the reason and lost his train of thought. Are you Li Che, Master Li? A hand, rough with calluses from knife training, rested on the cloth-wrapped hilt as Zhao Chuanxiang looked at Li Che approaching and asked with a smile. Li Che's hands were full, so he could only symbolically clasp his fist in response. Indeed, it is I. What does the policeman wish to instruct? Zhao Chuanxiang watched Li Che and silently appraised him, then imperceptibly shook his head. From the spiritual state and aura that Li Che exuded, his cultivation was just at the great success in skin refinement, nothing more. It was unlikely he was the bone-tempering criminal who had killed Sun Changbiao with ruthless and decisive means. According to Madame Liu's description, that criminal was nearly 2 meters tall, heavily muscled, and extremely terrifying. A stark contrast to Li Che's physique. However, Zhao Chuanxiang didn't come looking for Li Che for that reason. Madame Liu had confessed. Zhao Chuanxiang watched Li Che, still maintaining an almost smiling expression. Li Che's heart tightened instantly, realizing what Zhao Chuanxiang was referring to. Did you receive a furious spirit infant wood carving 2 days ago? That was placed at your doorstep by the deceased Sun Changbiao. As a follower of the spirit infant sect, he had targeted your family's spirit infant. Zhao Chuanxiang's lips curled into a slight arc, focusing on Li Che. Upon hearing this, Li Che clenched his teeth in anger. I am indeed aware because my daughter XIXI was targeted by the spirit infant sect right after she was born, which is why I strove to excel and became a woodcarver at the wood carving shop and moved into Sue's courtyard. I thought we could be carefree, and my daughter could grow up safely, but little did I expect, after XIXI's 1-year-old birthday feast, the spirit infant sect turned up in our shop again. As Li Che spoke with deep emotion, his face flushed with anger. Master Chen speculated that it was someone from the shop who placed the wood carving and asked Master Chen to help look for it. Eventually, it was confirmed to be the doing of Sun Changbiao. At this point, Li Che's face exhibited a look of fright. Head Constable Zhao, I did not kill Sun Changbiao, I. Zhao Chuanxiang had been staring at Li Che, and upon seeing his slightly incoherent speech, raised his hand to gesture. All right, I know it wasn't you. You wouldn't have the capability to kill Sun Changbiao. Since it involves you, I was just asking as a routine part of the investigation. Zhao Chuanxiang turned around at the right moment, looking towards the courtyard. Master Li, won't you invite me in for a sit? Zhao Chuanxiang continued with a smile, I've heard about your superb wood carving skills. Perhaps I might request your craftsmanship in the future. Upon hearing this, Li Che hesitated momentarily, his heart reluctant to invite the other inside, but given the officer's direct request, he could only invite him into the courtyard. He opened the courtyard door. Zhang Ye, looking beautiful, stood under the eaves piled with thick snow, while XIXI, stomping in her wooden walker, toddled around the freshly swept courtyard. Upon seeing a government officer entering the courtyard, Zhang Ye's complexion immediately turned pale. Husband! She hurriedly called out, thinking that Li Che had committed some crime. After putting down the things in his hands, Li Che waved his hand towards Zhang Ye. This is Head Constable Zhao from Yamen, here to inquire about some matters, nothing serious. Zhang Ye nodded upon hearing this, her tense heart somewhat relaxed. Zhao Chuanxiang had appeared by XIXI's side at some point, smiling amiably, so this is Master Li's daughter. She truly is lively and lovely, as exquisite as carved jade. Upon hearing this, Li Chai's heart tightened instantly, and alarm bells went off. Yes, all children are like this. I really like children. May I hold her? Zhao Chuanxiang asked gently. The little girl is shy. I'm sorry, Head Constable Zhao, Li Chai declined without a second thought. However, Head Constable Zhao, as if he hadn't heard, squatted down and looked at XIXI, can uncle hold you, all right. XIXI's crystal clear large eyes stared at Head Constable Zhao, and the next moment, she started scooting away in her walker, clattering along. Yet, Zhao Chuanxiang laughed, his hand already reaching out. Li Chai's eyes narrowed, his dragon elephant Vajra Deo fruit began to throb slightly in his heart. But he quickly suppressed it. Because the hand Zhao Chuanxiang extended had been grabbed by another hand, preventing him from holding XIXI. Head Constable Zhao, if the girl doesn't want to be held by you, what are you doing? Old Chen, not a tall figure, with a leather wine flask at his waist, had reached out his hand and firmly held Zhao Chuanxiang's extended hand. The whirling snowstorm seemed to freeze in that moment, hanging in mid-air, then silently shredded by a terrifying gale, exploding into a mist of snow. Two conflicting auras clashed fiercely, like giant waves colliding skywards. Zhao Chuanxiang slightly turned his head, his gaze shifting to Chen Dabao who had stopped his motion, the smile on his face gradually fading. So, it's Master Chen. If the kid doesn't like you, don't force it. Don't leave any traumas on the child. Old Chen spoke indifferently. Grandpa Chen, hug, XIXI, seeing Master Chen, pedaled over to him on her walker, bumping into his legs, and called out in a babyish voice. Oh my precious baby, Grandpa will hold you, come here. Old Chen looked at XIXI, his aged face blooming with a smile like chrysanthemums, and picked XIXI up from her walker. Zhao Chuanxiang no longer squatted down but stood up, his hand returning to rest on the handle of his knife. Such a lovely child. Zhao Chuanxiang watched as old Chen walked away with XIXI, saying with a smile. Li Chai's heart relaxed slightly as well. Master Li, Master Chen, I shall leave first. Zhao Chuanxiang did not stay longer in the courtyard, waved his hand, and left the courtyard, merging into the blurry snowstorm, disappearing from sight. Old Chen held XIXI, gently bouncing her as he played with her, making XIXI giggle continuously. While watching Zhao Chuanxiang's retreating figure, he slowly relaxed. Don't let people easily enter the courtyard in the future, especially strange guests. Old Chen said gravely. XIXI's resistance to Zhao Chuanxiang isn't because she's shy. XIXI is perceptive, she has the spirit to discern good from evil intent towards her, and this Zhao Chuanxiang harbors no good intentions, Old Chen said. Upon hearing this, Li Chai's expression shifted slightly. He told you that Madame Lu confessed, and it was Sun Changbiao who placed the spirit infant wood carving in front of your courtyard. Old Chen looked at Li Chai. Li Chai nodded. Old Chen smiled slightly, his voice a bit cold. From start to finish, Madame Lu only admitted that they, as a couple, had joined the spirit infant sect, but she never confessed to placing the spirit infant wood carving at your doorstep. Moreover, the spirit infant statue found in Sun Changbiao's home was a common three-headed six-armed spiritual infant statue, with one eye open and one closed. How then did Zhao Chuanxiang know that the one placed in front of your door was the furious spirit infant?